Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to a city council work session and retreat of Thursday, January 9th. Call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first on the agenda, we have public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? Kyle?
Start the year off right and talk in public.
Pardon
That's my first time talking up there. I'm scared.
me? So,
That could be nice, Barb.
I'll try. So you're gonna start out by giving the date.
Kyle Jenin, PO Box 373. And I have like 5 to 10 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, you are.
I just wanted to bring up the topic of divisiveness that you guys are going to talk about tomorrow. Can't be here. And I just I hope that it's not all singled out to one person in town or a group of people being divisive, but it's really a collective thing in this last year, as we've seen. Emails, volley of 10, Facebook groups that are negative, city council members that are making public comments, social media, members of city committees acquiring email lists and spamming their rhetoric throughout town. I mean, you thought all last year. I personally am not on any of the email lists and I don't read them or belong to those Facebook groups because I don't want to read that. I don't want my positivity drained by all that garbage. And I recommend people do that and just seek out the sources that you trust, not rely on Facebook to put certain things in your face that they think you're going to like. Most of it's negative and that is good Facebook drama stuff. But I encourage people to go to come to city council meetings, watch them on Zoom afterwards if you can't attend in person, and get involved in the community. I think is so important, as Lisa mentioned the other night. But when you guys talk about it, it's not one person causing the divisiveness. It really is a whole group of people. I mean, it's the whole town is in on this, different angles. And whether you agree with them or not, I hope we just collectively can come together and not be divisive. I love this community as much as most of you, if not even more so in a lot of respects. And then on the other topic of our cow system, I think I'm really disappointed as well as alarmed that our community doesn't have a working system right now. We can rely on phones, but there's our cell phone service in this town, as many of us know. It's not super reliable. I mean, our community is at risk as well as our visitors. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Al.
Can you be doing that?
Okay, anyone else in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? That would like, Anita, would you like to make any public comment?
Switch this out. You're gonna be down.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. So I think our first two items on the agenda will be the quick ones. And that's,
We got the chair.
oh, the chair.
Chair.
Oh, good. Put an X on it.
I'm gonna got myself.
Okay, so first we have two city council meetings that we need to make a decision on whether or not we are going to have them on the regularly scheduled day or we want to move this. And I know with National Night Out, they changed the time, but then we scheduled an executive session last year, so we weren't able to attend.
Leave it the way it is and then just try to not do an executive session if needed, or if you guys wanted to think about switching the nights, we could. It was just kind of throwing out there just to see what the preference was.
But I think my preference would be to just keep it and make a note not to schedule
I agree.
an executive
Yeah,
session.
too confused.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then Tuesday, November 11th is Veterans Day. Obviously, City Council or City Hall is closed, so we definitely need to reschedule
Oh.
that. So would people prefer Mondays or Wednesday of that week?
Monday for me.
Monday?
Wednesday.
I'm gonna be
Wednesday.
flying on Monday.
In November?
In November, yeah.
You weren't going anywhere.
I won't be missing any meetings.
Okay.
Schedule end of week meetings.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'll be
So-
flying back on that Monday, so
So Wednesday for you?
Wednesday would be,
Okay, Wednesday
for me.
okay.
That's
It's the only day that Gib and I have off together.
Pardon me?
Wednesdays or Mondays are the only days that my husband and I have together.
yeah, I
Could we make-
still would like Monday.
Best.
Wednesday is not a good day for me. Thursday would work.
I think Thursday will probably be Friends of Haystack Rock.
It'd be what?
Friends of Haystack Rock, because it'll be,
Is that the second? Is
yeah,
that the second one? Okay.
but do we want to wait? And,
We do it closer, maybe that'd be better.
yeah,
Maybe we can revisit this in a couple months.
yeah.
Yeah.
Put it on a
How about,
further agenda,
March. Which one would you prefer?
probably May.
May. Okay, I'll put it on the May.
Yeah.
May one.
Okay, great. Okay,
And since we're on dates, just a quick reminder, January and February coffee with the counselors is the fourth Monday of those 2 months, because the third Mondays are holidays.
Okay.
Just
great.
Gary, are you doing it with me this month?
I can't do Mondays.
Okay, so we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Add it to the agenda.
Yeah. Okay,
I missed that. I need to add something to the agenda.
Coffee with the counselors if we're gonna talk about that.
Oh, okay, you want to talk about coffee with the counselor?
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that.
Okay.
so we want to do that tomorrow?
Sure.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
okay. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have community development. On up. Community. Morning.
How you doing?
Great, how are you doing?
Good. It's early. It's the first one. Lunch is right around the corner.
There's still hope for the day, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the first item on the agenda under community development is emails to DRB and planning commission from members or outside users. And who put this on the agenda?
That came from, we wanted to get council's weigh in on something.
Okay,
When anybody emails council, no matter what it is, we forward it to council. There's been a lot of people that would send things that are not necessarily current issues with planning or DRB, and they say, we want you to send this to planning and DRB. And so we wanted council to see what direction they'd like to see that happen, because we have a couple ways. We can go and forward it to them, but not all items are pertaining to something that they're discussing. Or we can tell people, thanks, we have it, we'll include it in the next packet.
Wait a minute.
for planning and DRB.
Yes.
Okay.
This is
Kinds of
only
things.
DRB.
Can you give an example of what kinds of,
Okay, one of the examples was Tim Ramey sent out the information about the civic site that does the AI, which was an interesting thing. And so he wanted that to go out to the committees and commissions. And then another person emailed back and said, oh, are we allowed to send stuff? Because if we are, I want to send something to the group. And that one was helpful for planning and DRB because it was a neat tool to use, but not all things that are coming in are necessarily things that, it's stuff that they want them to know. And so we don't want to spam our commissions and boards, but
Right.
also they are entitled to public comment. So one of the ways you can do it is say, I will include that in the next packet. Or we can still just forward them to you. So we wanted to get council's
Including them in the packet doesn't work that well if when you come in, there's a bunch of new stuff that you haven't seen.
but not all of these items are pertaining to something they're discussing.
Okay, but even so, I'm always put off when I come in. There's something new for me to read because I'm a slow reader and so I can't just absorb it right here at the podium, 2 minutes before a meeting.
It would be
So,
in the packet though. so
oh,
you
in the
have it
packet.
advance.
Okay. So,
Things unrelated to the meeting in the packet?
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
think,
don't really like that.
He wanted some information, we wanted some direction kind of from council.
I think
on
just
this.
forwarding it is fine. We get things,
I think the issue that we run into sometimes is whose do we send? Whose do we not? Why didn't you send mine? Why did you send this one? And then we're looked at like we're hiding something or things like that. And it puts us in a challenging position that we don't want to be in. Oftentimes there's discussions about whether or not we're doing a quorum outside of a meeting from members talking about things, not in a meeting setting and having ex parte contacts basically. So there's some legalese to this that are in play as well. So it's just something that we get it, and it's not as though we don't feel it's important or we don't want to send it out. It oftentimes is, okay, what are we setting ourselves up for that we may not be actually following?
okay.
And so that's the concern.
See, I don't understand how if someone who's not sitting on the DRB or not sitting on the planning commission sends an email to either of those groups and it goes out to the whole group, that's not a violation that's not a quorum because it has to be,
It's when you reply.
it's when you respond to it and talk to the whole group.
Yep.
And I've been chastised many times for that. That's when it is, even though my response hasn't been to the group. It's been to an individual person, but the group has been CC'd on it. And I found out that Ashley said I couldn't even do that. But if you don't respond, if you just get it as an email, there's no legal issue there.
Yeah, and again, I think we just want a policy. I don't particularly care one way or the other what the answer is. I want to be consistent in
Right.
what we're doing. And I don't mean I don't care, but it's one of those things. I just want to be consistent in whatever we choose to do. As far as that's less challenging, I would say, that issue when it's a public and it wants to go to everyone. It's more of when it's a DRB member or a plan commission member or a council member that says, well, I'm acting as a public citizen when they're on these bodies. And it's like, okay,
But there's still,
what do I do?
I don't.
Well, I think, so if it's just random community members that are sending it, I don't see why it would make sense for it to be in a packet, that a packet has certain topics. So sending that to those groups as they come in and note that they're a public comment for whatever. But if it's one of us saying something, one of planning commission members wanting to say something, including that and in the next packet saying, okay, well, we'll include this as a comment for the whole group in the next packet.
Sure.
What kind of content are we talking about? Are we talking about something that, are we talking about comments about issues that the DRB and the planning commission are looking at? Or are we talking about general,
It's all of them.
okay,
Every single one. Anything you want to bring up, we get.
so should there be one policy for issues that are being discussed at the time or issue a policy?
That's up to you guys to decide.
That's too confusing. That puts too much of an onus on Jen to sort of decide which ones are relevant and which aren't. And you're also going to offend people that way too. They're going to say, well, this is relevant to,
Legal, I mean, if it's an issue, if the content is an issue that the planning commission and the DRB is talking about at the time, that could be a legal situation, because if somebody's decided to look at it, if the council, for instance, has decided to look at an issue on the record instead of de novo, then there's that problem.
except that it doesn't come to the council.
Well,
It comes to if it's written to the design review board, it would be forwarded to them. If it's written to planning commission, it would.
but if it also comes to the council, then you've got a problem. But I guess that's my question is, are they issues or are they something that's out?
They're all the above. And the one thing I would say is, even though they're going to that particular board or commission, oftentimes we're getting appeals. So eventually they are coming to council. So even though the council may not be getting it right away,
See him,
Time stuff is coming to you.
yeah, we'll see him eventually if it's.
Right, right. But what I'm saying is if you start commenting at that point in time, are you prejudicing yourself for a decision that eventually comes to you?
If we do, yeah.
Yes.
Right, and I'm not talking, I don't think, I mean, I think there should be no response from planning commission, and they should be told that they can't respond
Right, right.
they can get the information from the person who wants to write the letter. But I think when you start separating, well, this is relevant to the thing and this isn't, you're gonna end up with somebody getting really pissed.
We're in that position. That's why we're talking about.
Don't want to put you in that position.
Yeah, because it's one of those ones where, you know, it's just, yeah, it's a challenging position. And you're right. It's like, it's not easy coming to council members and saying, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. I mean, that's not fun to be able to say, and I'm sure you guys don't appreciate it from time to time when we say something to that effect. Hey, be careful. I'm not, so it's just one of those ones that if we have a standard policy of some type, not saying we have to solve it right now. I mean, it's a topic that, potentially needs to be discussed and thought through, and whether or not there's any input from the attorneys or not, but it's just out there, and we'd just like to have a policy of some type.
I just hate it when when someone tells me, well, did you see the letter I sent? And what letter? That's not good. So I think that they shouldn't be edited. They should be whatever, if they send it to the bodies, that's fine, even if it's not on maybe it's on something that will end up coming up in a couple months.
Sure.
But what I'd like to know is now I've sent out a whole bunch of excerpts from different magazines, scientific journals about different things like the benefits of trees or more recently about wood smoke, and how that affects people's lungs. Those things, those are educational items that I've taken from different journals. Is that not something I can do?
That's a good question, because oftentimes it's, I guess the one thing we would have to figure out, and this might be a little bit of a discussion with Bill or Ashley, is on, I think, legislative matters, like when we're doing some amendments to trees or different ordinances. I think there's a little bit more flexibility, but when we're having quasi judicials, appeals, conditional use permits, when you're acting injudiciously, I think that's a whole different matter. That someone, say there's something we want or something that we don't want from a land use perspective, and we have those things out there, it opens the door for potential appeals of, things that we may or may not want, so it just opens the door. So might have to get some feedback from those guys to give us a little bit of input.
Is it okay to send out someone else could send out something from another journal that says, no, wood smoke is really good for you and you should be breathing it in to live longer. And that's in their right to do too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, and that is a legislative thing because it would be requiring an ordinance or some kind of
Right.
policy to, limit or change how we do
Yeah.
that. I don't.
So can I give you an example using that one? When you sent a lot of those articles out, I replied to you and said, did you want me to include these in the packet? You said yes. So I stuck those in a future packet.
Okay.
So there's an example of that one. Now, that's a little bit different with council because I know we're actually talking about that. But if you were to send it to planning commission and DRB just for them to know, but that's something that could be coming to them later. And we don't really want to hold on to it until a packet might come to them because then we're juggling a lot of stuff. But then,
Right.
like you said, if we send it to them, somebody can then send the one that says, no, this is really okay. And one of the others, I was looking through emails to try to find another one. It was an after the meeting where people want to share their thoughts after the meeting. Well, the meeting's closed. I will always send it to council no matter what, because you guys get a lot of public comment. DRB and planning commission, it doesn't happen quite as much, but every once in a while they get stuff. But now the meeting's closed, the hearing's closed, the record's closed, but people are still wanting to share their opinions. So then we get into some situations and that, like Steve said, we might need to talk to Bill about that, but just as an overall policy. Again, you guys are different than planning and DRB, but we want to avoid that. Well, you let them send it out, so I'm gonna send this out. situation. And one of the ways we thought to combat that would be, we'll put it in the next packet under public comment. But we were just wanted to have the conversation,
Yeah,
because it is different for them than you guys.
Mhm.
You guys are kind of in charge of everything.
Mhm.
They have the limited purview. And a lot of times it is things that would maybe be beneficial for them to read, but then you get into that other
yeah.
point.
I think we really do need Ashley on that, just because, because I think that it's really hard to know where the line is drawn. I have a hard time really all the time. Sometimes I just can't find that line.
We're in the same boat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
You know,
want, it's,
So that, you're right, it's a hard, you know, we just want to make sure we're doing it right.
but I would lean, and this is just my opinion, I would lean towards as much information from as many
And I think that's
possible, because I want to know what people are thinking.
fair.
I think it's my duty to know what they're thinking. So, because we're representative government. So that, that's how I would lean. The more more is better than less is better. And if it does blow up someone's email, well, too bad. If they're going to sit on a commission or board, they might have to put up with a few more emails.
So would you like us to just weigh in from the legal aspect? And then we can either follow whatever they say or bring it back to you guys for consideration?
I think we need to get the legal,
Yeah, I agree.
But do you want us to follow whatever they say or bring it back to you guys?
I think bring it back to us.
Okay, so we'll get some information from Ashley, Bill, both sides, and then put it on a work session?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Okay? Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a whole topic then.
Right.
Okay, next we have the code rewrite update.
Would you say we got one done? Actually, we got one or two, and we're coming for the second one.
Oh, I meant we had one topic on our.
I know, but I was just saying that one. Who's coming shortly? I don't know if anyone wants to ask any questions first. I would just kind of say that the tree section has been a focus, I think, since about May. That's finally coming to council on the 14th for a public hearing. So you guys be seeing that. A lot of the other topics that have been discussed, it talks about the housing updates, the STRs. Those are all things that are in the work. One of the comments that I would generally make is that during some of the work sessions, sometimes we've had topics that we've spoken of that are related to the zoning ordinance, but aren't really zoning amendment related. And I'd really like to start focusing as much as we can on the amendments themselves to, get sections of the ordinance moving forward, because I think it's hard for staff and the public when we are piecemealing sections throughout this, different zoning codes, different, what did you do? A couple of them, for example, I think when we were doing some of the appeals where, hey, why is it section such and such? The section today is.
Oh, yeah.
And so it gets into these little things that can be little slip ups that could be appealed or something to that effect, because you're saying the wrong section.
That'll change, won't it? Yes.
Yeah. But if we piecemeal it, it won't change. We'll do that each time we do a section, and that's fine. I don't have a problem what direction we want to head. But I do think when we start getting to the work sessions, I really want to start pounding on the code as much as possible and start making some headway that way. And so I'm open for any type of questions that you may have.
Well, I guess my question is, what in the heck is happening with the housing thing? I mean, it's just like, it seems like we have so few meetings. The focus group doesn't, unless I write to Marcy and say, hey, are we going to have a meeting? We don't hear from her
Yeah.
forever. I don't know what that's about, but it would seem like we'd want to move forward on this.
I think at the last work session, there was a little bit of discussion on it, and then the holidays came and things like that. So I think there's no question that that in and of itself slowed some things down. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying that that's what would happen. I'm sure we're going to be starting to talk because that was one of the next things from at the last meeting was to try to get some agreements on some of that language and to take that back to the housing focus group. So I will make contact with her and get that started and get that moving forward again.
Right, because by the time we get this thing passed, every single lot will have a, a mega mansion on it, and we won't have any place to put any.
Well, and I think, just so you're aware, I think there's going to be pushback on that. So we need to be prepared for that discussion as well.
Well, sure, from the building industry.
I would say from people in general, because we're going to be creating a lot of non-conforming structures if we go to that route. So we have to be very careful in terms of how we're doing it. A person that has a home now that might be over that requirement now is going to be very limited should they want to do a small addition or things of that nature. So there is not just the mega mansion. It might just be the person that has something small that wants another bedroom or a deck or something of that nature that's not there. So I would expect that we're going to have some interesting conversations.
I think we also have to address that issue because we've really never addressed that part of it.
Right. Everyone's been very easy to say, hey, this sounds great.
Right.
But I think once, because I would expect that we might have to provide notices to like the 56, because we might be taking away, the ability for someone to do something. And so that in and of itself is going to trigger a lot of notice to individuals that are going to be like, huh? And so not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sure there's a way to fashion the code to take into account those situations, but we haven't even discussed that part.
Right. And so that's going to be, I think, something significant that we really have to carefully consider.
Yeah, I agree. So we have to have more meetings. We've got to.
Most likely. So like I said, what I can do, I think it was just the holidays. We had that work session. I think it was early part of December. That was one of the things that we were speaking about was we are going to start coming back to that. And then the holidays came. So I will reach out and be sure to start that up again.
Do we have a list of those priorities that we want to have addressed in the
code?
Code audit? Yeah. I mean, we got trees and housing. You mentioned STRs. We've talked about commercial parking requirements in the past.
Yeah,
Is there a list of other things that?
I think the initial code audit had 5 items, trees, wetlands, parking, housing.
Yeah, those were priorities, but
I can't remember what
are there other things beyond that?
Oh, Gary, there's going to be a priority that's going to come soon enough. There'll be another priority of some. And that's what I always get a little bit nervous about is just the fact that something will come up and that'll be the next hot topic. And that's where I think we got to rein some stuff in so it can be part of the overall addressing of the ordinance. Not to say if someone says, hey, this is the direction we want to go, that we won't do that. But I just want to try to get things pushed as forward as best as I can with regards to the overall amendment.
Beyond the priorities, beyond the 5 original priorities, how much more work needs to be done on that?
I would say minimum 1.5 to 2 years. I mean, look at how long wetlands and trees have taken. When did you set the priorities? 2022?
So are you saying that in addition to the priorities, we have another 1.5?
I would say minimum. That's probably best case scenario. I mean, these other ones took 6 months to 8 months just to do these specific priority, ones we are focused on. So this is and I would say the same thing, even if we are starting today on the code audit, it's a lengthy process. You're talking about, you think you got the code where you want, you start having the public input, and all of a sudden there's things like we just talked about that pop up from out of nowhere where it's like, oh man, we don't want to create something where now we got to go and amend it after we just changed it. because we didn't think of something. So it's, you know, I'm not trying to delay anything. Anytime you do like a code amendment or things like, it just takes a significant amount of time to get done.
Actually, Steve, the trees has almost been 2 years we've been meeting.
So, and that's just a section
Just one
of
overlay.
many.
Yeah,
But it's a big overlay. It's important.
yeah, but it's,
It is, but that's one section that took that long.
yeah, 2 years.
So, you know, a lot of time, and I'm not trying to say I don't want to move things forward. It's just the reality of the situation. So we'll continue to, you know, push forward as best we can, whatever the topics. I don't know that Gary can say, hey, we should do these types of things. I think it's just a matter of just in general, doing the things we need to do with the entire code.
I get letters all the time saying, you know, complaining, you're not doing anything about housing, which is such BS because, you know, we've been working really, I mean, we're trying. I'd like more meetings, you know, but
It's an incredibly hard topic.
yes, you can't just sit down and rewrite a code and then, you know, it's just,
We don't have a lot of land. We have the lots that are left are very, very challenging. There's wetlands, there's trees. There's not huge parcels of lands. A lot of people want to talk about the West Wind site. You got slopes, you got wetlands, you got no infrastructure. You just can't think that these things just happen. They take, you know, incremental steps that the council of today that does the dirty work and the council of tomorrow gets to cut the ribbon. But you can't start somewhere without someone doing something.
Right.
And so sometimes, even though it's the dirty work that no one wants to get their hands on and is challenging, it leads to success down the line. Small incremental things over time that you can do lead to things where in the end, you're like, oh, wow, we did that right. Or, you know, maybe we needed to do something else. But I think oftentimes we want to try big picture when sometimes small victories over time add up. And I think staying focused on those sometimes is something to consider.
Well, what does this process look like? I mean, so we've got the entire code reorganization done, which yay. Wetlands is now part of the code, but these other items, the housing, the trees, you mentioned STRs, I'm not sure what that involves. The parking, as far as the priorities. Are we trying to do them in one batch at some point soon? And then are you saying we should be looking at every other secondary priority also to include as part of that batch? Or I don't have an idea of what this process looks like.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and I'm coming into it from the priorities that were set previously, and we can get those. But I think overall, in the end, I think eventually what we do is just like to go kind of sections by section. And when we go to the work sessions, what I'm envisioning is that I thought the process was fairly well done with wetlands from the standpoint, and even trees, from the standpoint of we did amendments, we brought the amendments to the group, we looked at it, we saw different sections. It takes a lot of time and effort and work. And eventually, I think what we'll do is just do chapters at a time. I don't know that there's necessarily a priority other than just my take is starting at chapter 1 and moving forward. But that's what my vision
Trees and update it, and then we'll do housing and update it, and
then we're gonna eventually chapter 1 and do these sections at a time.
think everyone.
Because right now we're going 15, 12, 9, 7.
but trees went to the planning commission. How many times, Eric? 3 or 4? It went
Something like that, yeah.
to the planning commission 4 times and feedback was given and we went back to the work table again, came back, thought, oh, we got it now. Nope. More feedback.
Yeah,
Back to the work table.
it's gonna happen on, I would imagine on all the others, potentially the other sections.
And the trees is not nearly as complicated as housing.
Mhm.
not even close. So, the wetlands was the easiest because we were so clearly out of compliance with best available science that it was kind of a no-brainer to go from 55 feet to 50. But the trees is also not that complicated. But it was complicated enough for 4 planning commission meetings before planning commission
Right,
thought that it was good
yeah,
and voted for it. And everyone on the planning commission had pretty much, the planning commission was looking for consensus from all parties. And it took forever to get it.
yeah.
The end result, of course, is not what I wanted, but I'm still happy.
Well, and I think the one aspect of it is, even though it's taking time, it's probably better because of it,
Yeah,
instead of rushing something.
because
I'm not saying I'm all excited about having hearings all the time and doing this stuff, but at the same time, in the end, if the product's better, I'm good with that.
that it's something that sort of takes into account all the different factors.
Sure.
There was, a builder on it, and there's business people, and there's tree huggers, and there's,
Yeah,
you know,
a good amount of different perspectives is key.
but the housing thing, of course, is going to be, I'd say, 4 times more complicated
At
than,
least.
at least, than trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a real hard one.
Right. But at the same time, the one thing is since we're doing it, it is good to focus on it, to try to get it, because it isn't, everyone sees it as important. It's been a priority. So even though it didn't happen yesterday, it's still moving along and it's an important focus. And I think, we focus on that, we get that, and eventually we get to the, chapter 1 and start doing those sections. So that's, I don't know if I answer your question, Gary, exactly, but
I don't know. I just see that we have to wrap our heads around, I think we've all been like, code audit, let's start it and let's finish it. And
I think everyone.
code is ever finished.
It was a big message that I think got promised, that this was something that could happen overnight. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is years.
There was no promise it would be overnight.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
There was an expectation for
It's an expectation.
community, just
Yeah, no, I understand, but
give us housing,
And I think, I think we need to wrap our heads around that we're never really done with the code.
No,
Always going to need work.
there'll always be amendments.
And we have accomplished that major rewrite and reorganization. And so.
Yeah, that in and of itself, just cleaning it up and getting it where things needed to be, and not having saying it multiple times throughout, was accomplishment in and of itself to start the process.
I mean, I even thought that we were going to, number 1, update and do the reorganization. And then number 2, hit these priorities, and that there was like this ending to it. And that's clearly not the way that it works in the real world.
And I think it's better that we know that and just keep plugging away.
But the problem, I think, is budget. I mean, are we paying this woman like for her to do this? And how much are we paying?
Yeah, I'd love to know that.
I'll provide that information if,
Herb's work essentially become city staff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know about that, but
Not directly, but essentially,
Yeah.
like, for the
yes.
foreseeable future, that
Right.
there is.
Yes. And you know what? We need someone if we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
True.
And we need someone to get us through these priorities.
Yeah.
I think, beyond that, maybe we need to reassess what comes next, but.
Yeah, and the other aspect of it is doing these sections. Oftentimes, you might just do sections at a time. You might not do a full code audit, right? Even if you ended up with the reorg and you did sections over time, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you're still making changes and progress. From my perspective, I think the reorg was a big deal. It just got everything in right. And now oftentimes that's what communities do and what we've done. Hey, this has become a priority. Let's amend this section. We've looked at it as doing that, but also doing the entire thing. And it's just gonna take some time and yeah, and resources to get it done.
Yeah, I just wonder, sometimes I just wonder if, it seems to be dragging the housing part is right. I'm not, it's so complicated, but I just don't, and you said it's because of the holidays, but it was before the holidays too. I had to write to her 2 times and say, are you going to have another housing meeting? Twice I did. And then all of a sudden, within a week, there'd be, oh yeah, let's have another housing meeting. Well, that's not my job to ask her. She should be the one initiating.
Well, and that'll be is partially my responsibility to make sure that happens. So I'll continue to work with her to try to get that done.
Like light a match.
Right, right. So I'll take the blame for that.
Well, I'm not blaming you. I refuse to give you the blame. So what about the STR thing?
STR, the only thing I can tell you a little bit with regards to that is just that, as you're aware, we decided to withdraw, changing it from chapter from the zoning ordinance to the chapter 5, the business license. Don't see a real issue with that because it was like what I mentioned, that it was going to remain a land use decision regardless of whether it was in the business section or zoning. And what that means is that if there were any changes to the regulations of the short-term rentals, it would still have to go through the same plan commission and council process, where we thought that there might be the ability to just have those changes before council. And that wasn't the case. So I think in relationship that, and this in my mind is also partially some of the things that slowed down the housing code, is how these two relate. And that section we were going to accomplish, so it was out and wasn't in the zoning, because when we change the housing,
Right.
there's an opportunity for it to impact short-term rentals. And so that's another thing that's out there with regards to housing, that when we do these things, we wanted to make sure that they weren't just opening the floodgates to potentially more. And I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but that was a concern.
So do you think that that should be, the STR thing should not be separated from housing, but should stay with that discussion? In other words, be part of that whole zoning ordinance, the STRs? It's gonna, it's gonna require a PAPA hearing, I think.
Absolutely, all anything to the zoning ordinance.
Right, so why not? It just that do think that what will end up happening is there's more increased building, that more people become aware of the decision to, or if we do decide to put a cap on STRs and buy into which seems to be the common stance from a lot of the housing authorities, is that STRs do very much influence the lack of long-term rentals, that there is a coordination between those two things. So if we're going to, that's why it makes me, I guess you can't rush it, but I just see that it's going to, more people are going to be applying for STRs.
Here's what I think on that. I think what we could do is, at a minimum, take a look at the specific criteria in the existing STR ordinance, because that's a discussion in and of itself, right? We all know that. But maybe taking little bits and pieces that relate to the housing to try to handle some of those concerns. Maybe there's long-term discussions that need to have further discussion about short-term rentals, but maybe it's those little things that relate to the housing that we could adjust as part of it when we're looking at the housing. So maybe we do just the little things initially, and then the caps and all that. That's a much larger discussion, but
It is, and we have a group that, that I sat on for 2 years, the STR group, that accomplished absolutely zip. And it just, and nothing happened. No changes were made, everything stayed the same. And, if indeed STRs are influencing the lack of affordable or long-term rentals, or then we got to do something.
Yeah, and I think if we do that with the housing and we start opening up that whole conversation, nothing's happening for a while. Whereas if we take little bits and pieces that are related to the housing and we can kind of make sure the housing is for housing purposes, not just rentals. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just talking out loud. You guys in the end are going to make the decisions. But I think we try to get the housing done and tweak the STRs in terms of how those could be impacted, and that the STRs will need to be I think a discussion in and of itself down the line.
Yeah, and people are going to want to come, people who have STRs we're going to hear a lot of
Yeah,
complaints about, and that's fine.
competing
Yeah.
interests.
I'm not sure what kind of things we're talking about as far as changing, but are you saying that capping the STRs is one of the big deals?
I have not said that at all, but there have been some who have mentioned caps.
We have discussed caps.
I think we
and-
should act on.
Yeah,
And if you guys decide to do so, that's totally fine. I'm just trying to think if that's part of the discussion, great, but expect housing to take longer.
Right. Step one would be to cap, because that's not a very difficult thing to do.
I mean, it's gonna be
Administering it will certainly be setting a cap,
the process.
nothing. But telling Jim, Jane and Joe that we only have 100 now, and how we're going to determine who gets what. Are we doing a little get together and I'm picking numbers and, oh, congratulations, you got one. Oh, sorry, you didn't.
And is all of that in code or,
No, we're creating it.
yeah,
I have nothing. So this is brand new,
well, where do those policies exist now?
nowhere.
Oh,
Other communities have policies
Yeah.
like that. Seaside has density limits on STR.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
other communities to look
Yeah.
at for how to administer that code, so we don't have to create it out of nowhere. It is.
I'm not talking so much about
I'm talking
that's
administration.
definitely code. What I'm talking about is we're creating a new process if we cap the number
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
of a waiting list and
Do
Uh,
first of the year, we all come in and I don't know.
Eric's right, though. Lots of other communities have the same thing, and we can just look at, you don't have to create it out of whole cloth. We can look at examples of other communities and how they do it.
I don't disagree with that one bit. All I'm saying is you guys are going to be dealing with about 50 people that are not going to be very happy, and they're going to be speaking to you.
Yeah,
I would like to start,
Prepared.
I would just like to start with the capping. I thought that's what you said.
yeah, that's what I'd like to.
I just feels like we're making it
Saying that for months.
complicated. It's,
we had a cap on the 5-year, we had lottery, and that seemed to work pretty well. It worked great.
I mean, capping it, we're
I didn't administer it. I don't know who.
not taking any STRs away.
Right.
What we are taking away is the option to get income from your property by short-term rental, and we're hopefully shifting that to your opportunity for income on a property would be long-term rental.
Right.
So we're taking that away and making that shift, whether that makes anything happen or not,
You should try.
is
We have to.
well,
try.
you
have to try. Yeah.
It just seems like capping it. I don't know, I get impatient with these things too. It's like, let's put a cap on it. Let's figure out the process and go.
Capping for almost a year now.
And that certainly can be part of the discussion. Just saying it's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Can we do it? I mean, can we,
We have those housing discussions. It's going to be the time.
I mean, the council has to discuss it first, because I don't know if
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
for that or not,
Maybe that's, I mean, we're talking about topics to discuss.
I think
That's
that should be
like one that needs to be discussed.
a work session on
Why
capping.
is it a housing, part of the housing discussion?
The reason is because if we allow for additional housing opportunities, there is the ability now to have additional STRs. Unless there's a cap. So
Okay.
the cap is part, so what I'm saying is if now, maybe previously you only had a single family home on a lot, right? Now you can have two. One of those now can be an STR that wasn't available previously.
Which is obviously not an ADU, but if, we did get any multifamily housing, duplexes, that would come into play. So I
Yes.
see that, but
And then
I guess that makes it even more of a priority that we should be
Yeah.
having that discussion.
that's why we want it to be part of it because of the things we're not thinking of that may happen as a result of making those changes.
In Marcy's, kind of initial layout of the new housing proposals, that was one of the big things that she said right from the go is if you do build 2 units on your property or 3 units on your property, none of them can be an STR. That's already one of the things that she was very vehement about. So, but because that's going to happen so far down the line that we actually do amend the code with all those changes, I think what Gary's saying is now just let's leave, the cap is something we can accomplish without another year of wrangling. We're just going to have a couple probably angry meetings. We do.
Probably 6 months worth of meetings, probably.
Yeah, so I think we should start, I think we should
Sure.
put on a work session first to see what the council everyone's ideas are about how it would be implemented, if they want it implemented, if we'd have a lottery, if we'd have first come, first serve, how it would happen. So we need to have that discussion and look at some other communities and what they're doing.
Would you like to hear what's on your February work session?
Yes, please.
Okay, so for February, we have the SDC inflationary review, which is the annual review we do once a year, recreational burning, gas leaf blowers, and the Elk Creek Terrace discussion. In the March work session, which obviously is further ahead, we only have one item right now. Pacific Power is going to send some information about LED lights. So that's so far what we have in March.
So why don't we have a February special work session?
Okay, so in February, I just sent out an email
Right.
to everyone that we do have one special date on hold. It was February 18th. That was the only day that worked for everyone.
Okay,
So if you want to go and use that,
It does seem like STRs is a higher priority than some of the things we're talking about
perfect.
and making something happen.
how about February 18th then, special?
Okay, so this will be the STR cap discussion.
Yeah, and then, that's a great time for people to come in and express their opinion too
Mhm.
about it.
Will that give us enough time to look at other communities that have caps?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Because that's what we're gonna try to accomplish. We're not,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't see us being able to go to Seaside's density, geographic location. That's it, because they're all,
And they're
SDRs are all over.
much bigger than
Canopy.
we are,
Yeah.
but
But I think the administration and the procedural stuff,
That's kind of what I was.
Yeah.
getting at is I think a density situation would be fantastic because I'm literally surrounded by them, but the,
But that would be.
but the actual administration,
That's-
how it's actually being administered in other communities that have had it for a decade or 5 years, whatever number
Yeah.
of years other communities have had these caps.
You're just talking about, okay, caps and licenses.
Yeah, like those limits, how are they administering those limits and how are they ensuring that that's actually happening?
your heart does too,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, and the other element that comes into play right now, STRs aren't licensed January 1 to December 31st. You apply, you're good for a year. There's all sorts of things that, and I would much rather see January 1 to December 31st, where all of them, I think there might have been some discussions and I'd have to talk with finance in terms of administration and how that all happened. But I think we can do some things, maybe easier today. I'd prefer that everything's done at the same time instead of haphazard.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Whatever month you guys are slowest, let's get renewed.
Actually, January is probably a good time, to be looking at that. I mean, things start ramping up, but at the same time, it makes sense just in the general about, it's just a good time to start the new, and we can always talk about that. Not saying that that's set in stone.
Have the cycle.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Whatever works best, the best practices.
Sounds good.
I think Seaside, looking at Seaside ordinances regarding STRs is a good idea. They have some really good policies for STRs. I think it'd be very.
And also some smaller communities, like Gerhart is a much smaller community.
Earhart had its own problems, but I think Seaside really is a good example of how to administer STRs. They do a good job.
Yeah,
But I just want to make sure that there isn't any misinformation that we're looking at density changes. Because if I was a short-term rental management company, I would be concerned about that. They're everywhere in Cannon Beach.
oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you
So
can,
we're looking at caps.
Yeah.
Density.
not by, yeah, not capped.
Yeah,
That's way too complicated, really, and it was too small a community to do that.
Well, and I think
Too late.
And I think the thing on some of that too is, I don't know how drastic you want to make a change. I think you want to make a change and then see where that goes. And if, for example, you think, hey, we want to do that or think about density down the line, maybe that's something. But if we're going to have that discussion, don't forget, it's going to lengthen our time to get something done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stop talking and actually get something done.
That's what we were saying earlier, the small incremental changes and reevaluating as you make changes actually makes progress as opposed to trying to make a giant leap that then takes you 6 years to do that leap and you don't make any progress in that 6 years.
Plus, we need to learn how it impacts long-term rentals.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much
I know, but
on that.
we need to still,
Yeah,
let's hope it helps,
yeah, I hope it does.
whatever we do. But we need to do it.
Okay,
So February 18th.
yeah, that's great.
Wrap your head around a great process.
All right. Sounds good. I can use your help if you have thoughts.
Okay, so we ready for wrap?
No,
Wrap.
we don't want that.
Well, I actually asked to have that put on.
Okay,
And I have been for a reason, because I've been attending the planning commission meetings
Mhm.
and riprap has been coming up and it's going to come up more and more and more. And listening to the planning commission meetings and listening to our meetings, I feel like we need more education on riprap. There's new things coming out all the time, but I want to see, we had a short presentation, and that was how many years ago? 2 years ago? It was great. It was great, but there's a lot, in those 2 years, there's also been a lot of change in thinking. And I'd like to know what best management practices are and best available science. And we can have a workshop where that information is presented to us from state parks, from land use conservation, from all those people, the agencies, and nonprofits as well, who are working on that issue. So I'd like to see us have another, now, this says to me, oh, no, one day wouldn't be. No, we don't have that kind of time. We just, no, I'd like to have another session that includes planning and the council, so we can find out what it is, because we're all over the board now. I mean, one thing's turned down, another thing isn't turned down. People are coming in and they're saying, I'm losing my home. And then you feel the sympathy, so you might act differently. I want, none of that matters. What matters is what is the best policy, management practices and science. And
There's very competing interests. No doubt about it. It's a hot topic. You can see everyone's perspective.
yes,
And so you guys as a council are going to see, an appeal coming to you in February. So I don't foresee those going away. I see more of them coming to you depending on the actions we take. I don't have, skin in the game one way or the other. It's just one of these ones that's a tough nut to crack. And so there will always be, in my mind, someone who's not going to be happy with the decision
Right,
in those matters.
of course.
And so those are challenging situations when you can't make everyone happy. And so those will be forthcoming, but yeah, we can certainly have that. But I think somehow, some way, there's gotta be, and this is just me speaking, not, this is, some type of compromises to make something work. I'm not saying what that example is, but it would be nice to get to some compromise that works for the owner as well as the public. And I don't know if we can get there or not, but that's certainly something I'd like to shoot for, because it is very hard for me to speak to people coming in saying, hey, we just want to do this. We're going to lose this. We're going to lose that. And for me to tell them, okay, procedurally, here's what you need to do. And they, it's hard to say, well, if you do these things, if you do ABC, you're going to get to D. That's not always the case. And so that's challenging from our perspective when we're talking to individuals who are coming in and talking about, their basically their what wealth, their legacy, or what have you. And so it's just a challenging issue. And I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a tough one. And you're right. Yeah, we can get some of that information, and it's probably a good idea.
Well, Diana Turner, who runs Friends of the Dunes, has access to all these state agencies and people who are willing to come and lecture and give a presentation. And I think we ought to set that up with her.
And that's
Possible, because I'm not even happy about making a decision on any of these riprap issues without more knowledge. I'm not going to work on people's emotions. I need to have, information. What is the best way to deal with this?
I understand that, but the riptides are this weekend,
I know,
and someone's going to be coming in April.
no, so that's what I'm saying.
So I mean,
Sooner rather than later.
right, I get that. So, but this is it's a tough one, and I feel for all parties involved on either side,
Right.
and it's not an easy one to administer.
I know, but if you have the science behind your decisions, if nothing else, that can help you.
I get that, but I think there should also be the perspective of an engineering company who does this to give us another perspective. I think we can take all of the science, but if you don't have the other perspective of, hey, here's why we're not doing these things or why we can't do these things, you're just getting one perspective.
That'd be fine. If
Yeah.
an engineering company wanted to come in
Right.
and at that same presentation,
Totally.
it'd be great, because I think we need to have, as long as they're going to give us, a real engineering thing, not about money, but about what the engineering takes. In other words, it's easier to throw up a wall than it is to make, really good burritos. It's easier. And so I don't want,
But you just said you don't have the science behind you. So how do we know that for sure?
yeah, well, I guess they can be questioned.
So, but, those are the challenges. I mean, it's hard for me when a person comes in with a professional experience in a particular matter and says, hey, we've looked at these things. Here's why we're doing this. It's hard for me to challenge them,
Yeah,
and I don't know.
they're hired by the person who,
I get that, but that's every single matter that comes
no,
before you.
I know, that's,
I mean, if you want to hire a geologist on your own for every single matter, then we can do
No.
that.
that's why,
But it's just resources.
that's why I want to bring in state agency geologists
But they're not going to be at the hearing though. They'll give you the education.
to give us an education. And I would like to do that as soon as possible,
Sure.
because these riprap things, I think there's one on the next meeting, isn't there?
Scope of review for an appeal
Just scope of review, okay. But,
coming in February.
yeah,
Well, it'd be
that's,
nice to see how other communities are dealing with this as well. I mean, right now, our code requires the least impactful solution that is deemed reasonable is my shorthand
Yeah,
for what it is.
I think a lot of ordinances, Gary, say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just how they approach it. And how they administer it. Not saying any way is right or wrong. We're administering it very much to our code, lowest level of impact first. So others may be taking other steps or getting someone, like you mentioned, Lisa, that maybe someone's coming in and saying a wall or a riprap right away. And maybe they say, okay, because that's okay, acceptable.
I'm just wondering how we strengthen it from here, or
I think the ordinance, and there might be some things that we could do, but I think the ordinance language in and of itself does give us what we need to address it. You know, there's always ways to, you know, maybe look and do things and administer it differently or tweak it as we're going through the zoning ordinance or whatever. But I think right now, it's fairly decent in terms of the steps and what you're supposed to do and the information that needs to be provided.
Right, but I don't think there's enough knowledge, because I walked in the last planning commission meeting for this, it was 3, I believe. And, you know, if I just didn't feel like everybody everybody knew, and including me. I don't know it. I don't know. I haven't gone to, the last thing I heard was the one that was presented here. And I know that since then, there's a lot more information out there, and the state agencies are doing a lot more work on it because they have to, because there's a possibility of it impacting the beach. So, and the beach belongs to everybody. So therefore, we have to figure this out, how we do it, how we're going to administer it. And I think knowledge is the key to doing that.
And I think what happens in a lot of these is both sides pepper us with tons of data. And the document is 700 pages long.
Right.
Full of arguments saying one thing or the other based on which side you're on.
Right.
And so it's very confusing.
But aren't state agencies, don't we sort of rely on them to be impartial? And I mean, I'm not saying they always are, obviously.
Yeah.
But we're not that naive, but we, you know, rely on them to give us, you know, at least some impartial science.
Yeah.
Scientific data on how.
And all of these eventually have to go to them regardless. I mean,
True.
the state approves riprap all over the place.
Yeah, they do.
So you're asking, they also deny it. That's correct. That's correct. They do both. And so it just depends on where it is, but oftentimes they're looking at us to make that initial determination from a community standpoint before it eventually goes to them for their action.
Influence them in some way, I think.
But there's no reason not to have them here and have this discussion to educate ourselves from the standpoint we're all going to be having these, you know, throughout 10 years.
I'd like to know, yeah, I'd like to know 10 years from now what they foresee happening, if it's all riprap or if it isn't riprap. Will houses disappear? I mean, we need to look at it completely.
Right.
And as we, you know, as climate changes and rising tides, this is going to be an extremely important issue. We're going to
Yeah.
requests all up and down the beach.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to be less.
Yeah.
Science, best available science now may change and be a different best available science 2 years from now. That happens all the time, but at least let's know what it is now. And I just don't feel like we know. So is everybody amenable to having people come in and have another one of those sessions where we have state parks and who's the other group that is
So you had
NRCD?
Togami, so you had Rhiannon from DLCD, John Allen and Laura Gable from Togami, and then Oregon State Parks, Tyler Blanchett and Kevin Herpy.
Yeah, I think there was another suggestion Diana had from another agency, a woman who, or I think it was a woman who is really good at making it understandable to everybody. You know, and I can't remember who it was, but I think she's talked to Bruce about it, hasn't she, Bruce?
I'm sorry, I was just noticing somebody coming in. I apologize.
I said, hasn't Diana has she approached you and come up with some ideas of people or not? Okay. And does Jen know who those are?
No, but we can get in touch with Diana again.
Okay, well, yeah, she's very anxious
Mhm.
to help in any way she can.
Mhm.
She's really worried about it.
And if we have a meeting like this, if we're able to arrange something like this, I would definitely, as I think either you or Steve mentioned it, have a soils engineer or a hydrogeologist here to discuss exactly how the wave action impacts the wall.
Right.
Either the wall,
All
the
that
dune,
stuff.
the
Yeah.
riprap, and what it takes to hold it back under certain
Right.
wave actions. Somebody that does the construction of any of
Right.
this sort of stuff for a
Right.
living. That has an expertise in the remediation of the damage as opposed to the protection of the environment.
Right, we should just have, yeah, both people, and I think she might know somebody from that side too, I don't know.
And also
An
have
engineering
the
firm.
planning commission.
Oh, the planning commission has to be part of it, yeah. This, it comes to them first.
Right.
Always. And there was so much, I mean, I felt like at the last planning commission meeting, there was, Diana getting up and she has a very, very direct focus. And I think that it would be better hearing it from the horse's mouth rather than from somebody who is repeating what the horse said.
Right. So we will work on convening that. Okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to keep checking up on it. I mean, maybe I could, if you reach out to Diana, she can actually coordinate some of those people. And then if I don't know what engineering firm,
Yeah, we can think about that a little bit.
I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else for Steve? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to your staff.
Yeah, I'm lucky who I have. Thanks.
Okay, next, Public Works. Break. No, start. No. That could known to be long winter. We barely started.
First, I'd just like to add to the comment that you'll probably see me coming forth about riprap because as we work through the design of our emergency vehicle ramp rebuild, this riprap has already come up. There are engineering firms that deal with environmental reviews on a regular basis. So they have people on staff that look at this from both structural, Eric, you just hit the nail on the head with what you mentioned, as well as environmental impact, because they have to go through those reviews. So I'll be coming to you with that for our vehicle ramp rebuild too. So I'm willing to help Steve with whatever he needs from that perspective. I'm be able to give you guys some updates. So cut me off if I get too detailed, because I always tend to want to give you more than what you asked for. So I'm going to start with TSP and the S-curves parking. TSP as a whole, I think that we have some low-hanging fruit there that we could pursue. But I think in being able to do that, it's going to take dollars to do it. And it's going to take staff, because I'll give an example. The boardwalk through the Spruce Reserve is one that I have been reached out by community members asking, why can't we start that? And so it's not about the design per se. We've gone down and looked at what Rockaway did. They have a great
Yeah,
boardwalk. If you have
fantastic.
the chance to go down, you should look at it. I've asked them lessons learned now that they've built that, if they could give me any advice at all before we pursue this, what would it be? And there's been discussions around that I think when we bring someone in to do the design for us, that those discussions should be part of that as a post lessons learned that they went through.
Where are these discussions happening? This is the first I've heard of it.
Well, there isn't any. I'm just saying that if you guys choose to ask me and Steve to move forward on TSP, these are some of the projects that I think are something we could move forward on if you choose to do that. I'm not recommending one way or another. I'm just bringing to your attention that this is a project out of the TSP that I've had many residents ask, why aren't we moving forward on? So that's why I mentioned it.
We're talking about
Mentioned it.
walk just where the nature trail is now or more expanding the trails within that area?
No, in the TSP, the purpose of that was to get people out of the middle of Spruce. They walk down the street when they're going up Spruce, heading towards City Hall from First Street. They walk in the street. And there's an incline there, and when you're coming up that incline, you don't always realize somebody is in the street until you're right up on them. I've seen some people in this room walking in the middle of Spruce. Everybody does it. It's not a highly traveled street, but it's dangerous. And they don't tend to get over on the side of the street. And so
So
this was
talking about a
discussed.
boardwalk alongside the road then?
The boardwalk is meant to meander through the reserve so that we could put educational things along the boardwalk that tell people you're walking in a reserve. And we have X number of big, trees in here. This is kind of the background of those trees. If we decided we wanted to do a heritage tree in there, that would be a spot that we could put some educational material and let people know what that area is all about. It's kind of a twofold, is getting people off the street, but taking them through the reserve that they're walking past when they're walking along Spruce and educate them about that area and our environment.
Is this part of the trail? Is this, I actually, had not really been aware of anything through the reserve. So is this part of the trail that they suggested to bypass the S curves and bypass Spruce? That is, or is this a totally separate thing?
I don't think it was part of the S curves. It was relative to, they had originally talked about a pathway along Spruce right in the right of way area per se. There's just not enough area. It's wet along there. There is a wetland in that area. So I told him you can't asphalt that area. We could do a rolled gravel path, but as far as access, why wouldn't we consider educating them about the reserve that's right there? And that's where we got on the topic about the boardwalk down in Rockaway, and that this could be kind of a two-headed coin. And it's a great idea.
I would like to talk about trails, but
And it's both, we talked about trails, we talked about bike paths, we talked about any way that we could get people out of the middle of the street. And
I always walk the nature trail instead of taking Spruce Trail. I shouldn't say always, but nature trails 100 yards away from that.
Yeah, but the problem is where do people connect to Spruce?
It doesn't go all the way through.
Yeah, because you'd have.
You have to go all the way
in,
down
and people
to Second
do that.
Street.
People like just walking that direct route from, A
From the
to,
post office back up to.
yeah. So you got to be able to connect somehow real easily along Spruce so that people will take that route. And it's true that people, I had a situation the other day where somebody and their dog were in one lane and they were in that, and I had to go around them and pray that nobody was coming up.
The other way.
Yeah, and yeah, it's very dangerous.
Yeah. So, Mike Morgan, is one person that approached me because he, has a relationship with some folks that have made some considerable contributions to the city, for, invasive species removal in, Little Pompeii and other projects. And they have expressed repeatedly to keep them apprised of projects. And he said, why wouldn't this be one that you would pursue that? And or there was also grant money available to move forward on that. And I said, I have to have the directions nod to tell me that I can pursue this. And when it comes to project volume and our plates being full, I'd have to be able to check off a couple things before I could take that on. It doesn't mean we couldn't hire a design consultant to give you some conceptual drawings about what this would look like, what the materials would consist of, you know, and so on and so forth. But I can't execute anything without your okay. Relative to the EBSCOR's parking, our team has already moved forward and added some additional signage, and we're monitoring that to see what kind of impact that makes. It's winter time, so it's not a time that is typically the time that plagues us. But it's good to start in that time frame so that people get used to seeing that sign, and hopefully when the summer comes, it's more visible. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big one in plastering this town with signs. I have expressed that to you guys before, so we try to be very strategic where we place them so they are very visible, and that when the police cite somebody, that it holds. When they go to court and try to challenge it, they can't come back and say, we didn't see the sign, you know? So we've done that. Specifically, just most recently, I just had the guys add 2 signs down by the Haystack Stairs as you come out of Forest Lawn. There's quite a place on the right-hand side that I have just repeatedly seen cars parked there. I take a snapshot, I contact the PD and say, there's cars down here, let's get them cited. Oftentimes, by the time they get down there, the car's moved. So people either park there, go take their snapshots, and then they come back and leave, or in the summertime, I've seen some cars there all day. And so we went after that area first. There's some on the S-curve along where Todd's building his home that I have been apprehensive about putting a sign there. I've talked to the PD in our Friday meetings that we have with planning, and these are legal right-of-ways. They can be completely off the pavement, out of the fog line, and there's no reason why we should restrict that in that area. It's not a safety area. I'm talking the east side of the S-curves heading south, okay? Not the side, of course, on Todd's, or the Ninth Tentacle House where we saw cars parking there. There is a sign there, it's been there. We even added the boulders to try to stop it. So I've not made any moves on that area specifically because there's plenty of room for people to park there.
You know, the problem is that people walk that. A lot of people walk it, and then if cars parked there, they can't walk in the right of way. They have to step out into traffic. And
They do.
I mean, I'm just, and this sounds morose, but I think someone's going to end up getting really badly hurt.
I have the same concern.
Yeah.
I really do. I have talked to ODOT. They've got a couple of traffic engineers that's worked with me on some other projects, the Warren Way intersection improvement. And I called them and I asked them to meet me in these locations and give me their thoughts on this, especially from a safety perspective. I talked to them about the people that use the pullout by the back stairs up against the shrubs there and how they dart across Hemlock.
Oh, yeah.
How can we stop this? You know, years past, people have said, put a crosswalk there, you know. That's the worst thing we could ever do. And the traffic engineer said, do not do that because you are implying that's a safe place for them to cross. And he said, it is not.
Oh, right.
So I said, should I take away this parking so it just prevents people from walking here? And he said, they can come from any one of these streets where they stay at a short-term rental or it's their second home and they don't want to drive, so they're going to walk. And he said, you have a number of hotels on the south end of town and people walk. He said, they're going to walk in this area. And he said, you have to be able to maintain the shoulders of your road so people can walk off the pavement and do that. He said, cut the brush back, cut the blackberries back. And I said, that just encourages parking. So it's a slippery slope. And I wish I could tell you that I have lots of solutions for you.
Yeah, I don't, the transportation plan did have a solution, but it's a major,
It is a major
that whole bypass trail that goes
trail. Yes.
Vista and then goes along Highway 1 with a screen between it and the highway
Right.
and comes down. I mean, that, and, you know, a way to make it so it's a permeable surface.
Right.
And, but a bicycle can still ride on it, all those things. It's a very
That's right.
tricky thing.
Yep.
And, you know, whether it would stop people from walking on the S curves, I'm beginning to doubt it because they were walking on the S curves because they want to look at the ocean. You know,
Want those pictures.
yeah. And so you know, unless we could drop the speed limit by a lot there, we could on the S curves. I think it's 25 or 30. I'm not sure which.
I think it's 25
You could drop it down.
area.
Town is 20. Why couldn't we drop it to 15? You go through the S curves. Not only that, there's tons of elk in there half the time. So you're coming around a corner and there's an elk's butt looking right in your windshield, you know? So I just think that
Yeah.
dropping down the speed limit would at least help. Not that people are going to pay attention to it,
Mhm.
but you know,
I look at speed limit signs like I do, don't park on this side of the street, no parking here, elk ahead, slow down. People aren't going to pay attention to it if they're not
yeah,
aware or they're not concerned. I mean, they're going to where they're going.
it's their job to be aware. I mean,
It is.
ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's not, you know, "Well, I didn't know I could steal that." Oh, you know, I mean,
People will say, well, it's enforcement.
heard it all.
Should enforce it.
Yeah,
Have a little police department.
yeah.
know? And so it is a challenge for a small town as small as us that gets the huge amount of tourism. It's a challenge.
Right.
And unless we brought in seasonal, officers that are trained in traffic control, flagging, to man those difficult intersections and to be able to do more patrol because the other officers answering calls and they're not going looking for tickets. They do when they're out there, but they have more calls to respond to.
Can those bicycle guys actually ticket somebody?
Oh, sure. They do downtown. They can write tickets.
So maybe we should,
Their focus is the downtown core to try to keep that moving and people parking in the right place. They're not down on the S curve.
can we expand them so that we do have a person on the S curves and they have to have a little moxie to be actually willing to cite people and not just smile?
That'd be a discussion with you and Chief and Bruce.
Well, I think that would help because those S curves are scary. I'm serious. I don't want to see the city getting sued because they've created a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And they would be. So what does the rest of the council think about asking about another person, another bicycle guy to patrol the S curves in the summer? Expanding the force by one and getting someone to that area.
So one thing that I want to explore with the chief is whether or not a bike aid can issue issue tickets for moving violations.
No, I don't think they can for moving violations.
Yeah, and that's really what you're looking at.
Well, we're also looking at the parking, the illegal parking in the shoulder. I mean, they could do that.
I don't know how much that's gonna stop people from doing it. If they're getting a ticket because they've already done it, maybe it would discourage others, but I'm.
Yeah, well,
not
I mean,
sure.
ticketing does help. I mean, I think most normal people think before they park somewhere, oh geez, I might get a ticket if I park here. Maybe I'll find another place.
And then there's a huge group that say, what the heck, I got.
Well, I know you can't stop that, but you're always gonna have,
Pay
you know.
$50 to park.
Right.
yep, you're gonna have,
Safe to have someone there. If it was safe to have an information officer there, they could move people along.
right, they could say, sorry, you can't park here.
Right.
exactly.
and be able to ticket when they were. So
Yeah.
as long as it's
That's-
safe for the information officer to be there, and it would probably take two, right?
Yeah, if you would, I don't think you'd want to put one person.
No.
And it could be paid for out of TLT funds.
It doesn't attract overnight visitors.
I'm gonna keep pushing for that. No, I'm serious. That's who it's serving,
But it's not attracting people.
I'm wondering if,
attracting them to stay alive.
would a seasonal, parking enforcement person qualify under TLT since it's seasonal for the high tourist time?
Yeah.
It's only brought in during that time, because that's really what we need, is just more parking enforcement, and not necessarily just on a bike or on foot, but just the roaming patrol that can have the authority to issue tickets.
And to tell people to move on because it's not safe to park here for the community, for other
Tell
tourists.
them where they can park, because once the car is there and someone's at the beach, you put a ticket on it, but the car is there and it's creating a safety, and we don't tow anybody. So there it sits.
Right. So I think last I heard there was an appetite, I think I've said this before, for expanding the scope of what TLT money, in the legislature. And I think, there's some lobbying going on now, and, things might loosen up a little on what that money could be spent on. But I think this is I don't think I think this is
I don't
No.
think it's clear at all that this
I
would be
do.
justifiable for restricted
They're
funds.
reading off
I do.
Ashley on that one.
Ashley's
Yeah.
very conservative.
This isn't something that benefits the visitors. This is something that punishes the visitors.
It benefits them
It's
by
not-
keeping them safe. That's the whole
It's direct
point.
punishment. It's not something that's benefiting them directly. It's punishing them and indirectly benefiting future
Yeah.
potential
No,
people.
It's the
It-
community.
Yeah,
a
it's
traffic
using
safety,
restricted funds for that wouldn't make any sense.
if you have a traffic safety
The
person
way it's
there,
written.
Even if you look at the
Saying,
intent
"Please
behind it,
don't."
not just the verbiage. It's clearly not something that
no, I disagree.
is intended to pay for that. I mean, Ben tested it with the roads that see higher usage with tourism. And it was pretty hardly slapped down,
A road that actually led to a visitor facility and
pretty
they
hardly slapped
If you
down by that.
called them a safety officer, and it's a tourist safety officer, it's-
No, I think you're walking a real narrow line there.
they would, sometime, we're gonna have to walk a narrow line.
I think Ashley needs to
Change.
weigh in on this.
Ashley will be here tomorrow.
Okay.
After the CBE discussion is your TLT discussion, and she'll still be on Zoom for that.
Okay,
So,
good.
yes,
Right.
okay,
That-
so chat with Ashley tomorrow.
feels like we've identified a lot of ways we can use TLT money for things that will benefit the community. I don't think we need to stretch it that far.
Yeah, I don't see that as a
But
stretch.
let's have the discussion with Ashley.
Ashley's a
It's
conservative.
not promotion and it's not
Safety.
a facility. Safety is not mentioned anywhere in the law.
But I think that if it was tested, safety would win out. I don't think that anybody would think that that wasn't a thing.
I guess then the council needs to have a decision if we want to intentionally break the law to have a test case.
It's not breaking the law. It depends on how you
So,
interpret the
so
law.
let's talk to Ashley tomorrow about it. But I think we have identified us that we want to also pursue having two traffic aid.
Up there. I think it would be really good, yeah, to get people to move along.
Well, and I think potentially using the ideas within the TSP to look at engineering solutions for the S curves as a long-term solution, because it doesn't seem to be a long-term solution to hire a couple of people to just spend their entire summer up there. Having an engineered solution, widening the shoulders in some fashion that makes it for people to walk along it, and then providing some sort of engineered barrier to prevent parking along it. Something like that is the long-term solution, as opposed to the long-term solution is two people that'll spend their entire summer up there every year.
Except there's no room on the S curves to expand the shoulder because there's a lot of houses that are right up
It is
against
really
it.
tight, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very tight. There's so many houses that are
Yeah.
right up to that,
A lot of property lines come right out.
Right.
I mean, very near where our infrastructure is.
Not to mention the property that wants to be built there.
Get me started, Nancy.
Two properties, I should say.
Oh, yeah.
I dropped that name.
Let's talk about something fun.
Okay.
You have something that's fun?
I do. I have a lot of stuff that's fun and it's good. So I'm going to start with water resiliency because that's what you asked me. Phase 1 is complete. That was our seismic valves and all the piping associated with that and the electrical that was associated with that. The electrical is completing this week, Friday. That was 586,000 for that phase. Business Oregon already came out. They did the site audit, which they have to do throughout this entire project because of their federal loans. There's aspects that are required of us in the reporting of this. Our rep from Business Oregon was very excited about it. Very pleased with what we had done on phase 1, despite the valves being delayed by almost a year. They had to extend the window of which I have to spend this loan money because we're held to a circle.
They did that.
Incremental progress on these projects so that we don't have money tied up that someone else could have used because we're delayed getting started. So this is why they hold our feet to the fire. And they honored that because it was nothing that we could control. And anyway, she was very pleased with the kickoff of the project. She invited us to attend their annual Business Oregon conference because they wanted to model this project. And so we're excited about that. Phase 2, this is the $3.2 million line replacement from our treatment plant to the tank down to Public Works Yard, where we'll have a water distribution point at the Public Works Yard. All the initial pit work and directional drilling was done in the winter. That's where we had the reserve closed for a period of time because it was a lot of dangerous open pits and equipment up there. We didn't want people up there. Some people ignored those signs, those very big, large orange and black signs. But Mr. Benefield was fantastic about saying, you shouldn't be in here, pivot and go, you know. Anyway, Happening is the contractor that won that bid. They'll be back in the spring to start pulling pipe. So all the HDPE pipe will be in those drilling points that they've done. And things will really start to roll fast. We estimate about 3 months. We've given ourselves 3 to 5 months in the schedule to complete that piece of it. So that is going well. I'll knock on wood. We haven't had delays. We had about a 2-week setback when they were doing the directional drill just because of the material they were hitting. When they were doing this, they were going through bits like crazy. And these are like drill bits on the end of your drill times 100. Wow. So it was kind of cool to watch that. Phase 3, this is our 5.3 million tank build. The engineering is complete. We're waiting on the OHA review of that, environmental review. And we imagine that they should be done in the next couple of weeks. Holidays put everybody behind. But we don't anticipate any issues there. We're preparing the paperwork to put the RFP out for construction. So as soon as that OHA review is done, that will be the next trigger we pull. We're estimating that the construction would actually start in late 2025, which would be just prepping that tank site up there for the tank company, whoever wins that bid, to bring all their equipment in and actually start constructing the tank. So the majority of the tank build would be happening in 2026, but they would actually get started with the site in 2025.
Is paid the easement, is that?
Yes. A lovely easement. Yeah, we would have actually been started already in this phase if it wasn't for that, but that's okay. We achieved the mission. And so I'm excited to be able to get the RFP out. We did get an additional 2 million for this phase because it has been so much time from the original estimate on this project for this phase. And where we are today, it's been over 5 years. And so Business Oregon awarded us 2 million more. We did a cost analysis and showed them, and they gave us the money. We did not have to adjust our rates any further as a result of that award. But luckily there was no hesitation. So, and then lastly, what we're calling phase 3B is our transmission backbone along Highway 101. So all of this is funded. Our rates are already established to pay our commitment to these loans. I'll remind you, they're 1% loans with a large principal forgiveness that we don't have to pay back. So the only thing that is not funded is the backbone. I have submitted a FEMA grant application already for the 7 million associated with that. It has a 25% matching. We're prepared for that should we be awarded that grant. The grants are delayed. Even before the California fires started, just the impacts of what's happened in Florida and some of the other areas that you guys already know about, FEMA just pulled back a little bit. As you've heard on the news, there is no FEMA money. So what FEMA does is they start looking at other FEMA dollars out there, such as infrastructure, and they could make the decision to reduce the money that's available for the infrastructure, build back better monies, and they can shift some of that for emergency restoration, which is the right thing to do. So what we don't know is how that grant could potentially be impacted. We've already, FEMA let us skip critical steps in the process because we had already submitted the grant last year and we weren't awarded. We were one of the 3 finalists that they looked at, and the city that got the money, they deserved those funds. As much as I hated to see us not get the money, they deserved to do that. It was their drinking water plant that they had to address. So they deserved it as much as we did. But FEMA invited us to resubmit just the way we submitted it before because the application was so strong. So they let us skip a couple steps. So that's where we are, and we're just on hold. I've also submitted a letter of intent to Business Oregon for a low interest loan. If we were to get the loan, the dollars are already factored into our rates, current rates. So when we did our rate review, we had Doug look at best case scenario and worst case scenario, which we brought to you. We assumed that we would not get the 1% because Business Oregon had already told me that that percentage rate is now off the table. And that all future loans, they were waiting to get federal information on what those interest rates were going to be, but they estimated anywhere from 2% to 3.5%. So we had Doug put the worst case scenario in so that if it was a 3.5% loan, that we were prepared to be able to address that. So there's a lot of options for us. When Business Oregon came out and they were so exhilarated, I took the opportunity, as some of you heard when they came and did their annual meeting here, I asked them to allow us to submit an application because they had held us off because we hadn't started phase 1. And they felt like we had a lot of money tied up and we hadn't really officially got started. And so we were really bearing down to get those valves to be able to to get this done so that I could ask them again for that opportunity. And they told me in that meeting I could submit. And so we did. It takes a long time to put the letter of intent together. It is like a 35-page document just to say, I'm going to apply. So there's a lot of reviews, environmental things I have to attach to that and tell them that if they gave me the money, I could execute. And so we've done that. When they came out and they were excited about it, I reminded them again when they made the invite. I said, I would be more than happy to come to your conference as long as you advocate the rest of the money, because without that, we've fallen short in completing this project. And I said, so this is what the backbone means to us. And to me, this project isn't done without that. And so, and she said 100%. I also reached out to one of the board members that when Bruce and I had to go in front of Business Oregon and present our project in the very beginning to even be considered funding, we established a nice relationship with this gentleman. And I reached out to him and said, hey, we submitted our letter of intent. Don't forget me. You know, 7 million asks was coming your way. And he goes, I know, I've already been, the girls have already hit me up. So we have 3 really strong advocates, and I'm encouraged to feel like we have a great chance of this, and we have already prepared ourselves for that loan payment. So nothing would have to change for us. So, let's see, I think that's all I have on that. If any questions on that I missed or you're curious about, or you'd like to see us do differently?
So the existing water rate changes that have already been accomplished are providing the funding for all the way through phase 3 phase 3B if the Business Oregon loan comes through.
Yes, and what we've discussed, that if I were to get the grant money and it isn't a loan, then that's something that we would come back and discuss with you about options for that. But for right now, we wanted to cover that debt so the project could be completed. The goal here is to get water to people within 72 hours of an event. And because we don't have that redundant backbone, we know the condition of all the pipes in the community. The majority of them are either PVC or concrete asbestos. They're not going to survive a shaker. And so we have to be able to get water from the north end to the south end, right? And so that's why that backbone is critical. So.
Okay, so what's coming around is the good news portion of this presentation. So when Karen was talking about rates, what you see in front of you, the one with the blue is what the water rates are projected to be over the next, let's see, till 2032 to be able to meet these obligations. The green one is wastewater and storm drain. You'll notice that those are not as high a percentage increase. So, so one of the main reasons that the rates have gone up like this is again, because of the size of the capital projects that we are now doing. In the past, we did not have, regular higher rate increases. We had low rate increases, so we're having to kind of catch up. So these rates are also based on a utility study. These are new. The Cannon Beach, March 20th from FCS. And this is part of the, where's my Fed? It's May, FCS, February council pack.
Council pack.
Yep. And there's also a copy in the May 14th, 2024 council packet. And that goes into a lot of detail on how the rates have been calculated. Again, we implemented the first rate increase in the current year, and you will be looking at larger increases over the next 3 years, and then it will begin to taper off over that time period. And this should be able to cover all the funding for the majority of Karen and the Public Works projects. And I am open to questions. Oh, and it will come before the council in May. Authorize the rate increase, which would go into effect July 1 of 2025 for the next increase.
And I do want to say that, as we progress into the larger portions of the projects, I want to the horn of our engineer that's assisting us is Mike Benefield. He is already working with Windsor, has been able to find ways that we can drive some efficiencies in our cost. And I mean, on the route of our pipe path, decisions we've made about abandoning former lines that we were going to keep in as kind of a backup line. It's like, do you need a backup to your backup? How many backups do you need, right? And so he's taken a really deep dive and has already driven several $100,000 of efficiency in this project. So I tease him and tell him he's every nickel that he's worth coming in and helping us, and it has been extremely valuable. So the bottom line here is if we're able to underrun these loans, then we obviously don't pay back at this total dollar amount. So that's our team goal personally. I hope we can do that. I'll feel even better about this project, and I feel super good about this project. So just keep that in mind.
Tim,
Any other questions about water resiliency? I have two other projects I would love to give you an update on if you would allow me to do so. I'll tell you what they are and you can say hold it or yes, we want to hear it. One is the Haystack Heights Waterline Loop. Is a master plan project. I'll tell you where we are with it. I have had many people reach out to me since the California fires because what's happening down there on the loss of water in their hydrants is what would happen in Haystack Heights. It's one of the reasons we're doing this project. So I can update you on that. And the other one is the First Street Bridge. I just got Civil West's report based on all the stuff we did over the holidays and the first week of January. So I'd like to update that. I'm going to put it in my Public Works packet. So I'd kind of like you to hear it before.
I'd like to hear both of them.
Yeah, Haystack was one of my questions for you. So,
Okay.
understood.
Want me to start on Haystack?
here, 2 seconds. I want to clarify something.
Sure.
So Tim, we have projected rate increases that would cover the costs of the water resiliency, but those rate increases, are they in place now or are they to be happening over the next?
These are projected to be in place right now. So what are projected every year. So again, the council has to approve them every year. And so what's in place right now is the fiscal year 2025 rate. So that's what went into effect on August 1st of 24. The fiscal year 26, that would go into effect per council approval on July 1st, 2026.
But this council will have to approve each one of these.
Each one of these rates, the council will approve on an annual basis.
But I,
It's a better picture than when we looked at it the last time as far as the higher increases, or is this what we approved?
This is what you approved. This is what you approved. It looks a little different because we didn't put the big rate increase into the for 2025. And so it looks a little different, but this is basically what you approved.
when we brought it to you originally, Lori did the part of the presentation with me when we were talking about pursuing the loans, that in order to pay back those debts, that this is the forecasted look of what the rates would have to be to support those debts, even factoring in the principal forgiveness, of course. But she put those projections in front of you guys. Oh, and like Bruce said, you're still approving them each year.
Right.
But she had to give you that look of what that was going to be. These are 30-year loans. And so she gave you that full picture. Any other questions on water resiliency.
On the water resiliency project, and is there any possible way to get like a line by line cost item and a schedule for that, just printed out?
When you say line by line cost schedule, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so what have you paid to date? And what, which I'm sure you have. And then, just possible projections on the schedule.
I think that's what she'd be referring to. So when we pay invoices, I create a payable when the engineering firm sends something in. They've already reviewed it based on, they're overseeing the contractors because they issued the RFP and whatnot. That was part of their scope. But then it comes to me and we do another review because we know where we are in the progress. We want to make sure they're billing us appropriately. And then the city does a drawdown from our loan with Business Oregon, and that's all tracked. So I track it at a more minute level within my own project, public works budget. But then as far as what goes to the loan and drawing down, Tim tracks it.
And we do have, I mean, I could run a report. The way we track it is by the phase in the GL. So when we do the expenditures before we can run that report. I would just show what we've already spent. I don't know how much the context will look a little weird, but
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I say. When you say line item, watch out what you ask for.
I would love to just take a look at this. I have a little bit.
Yeah, I think you guys this would be really helpful because then basically it breaks it down in the phases that we received the awards from Business Oregon. So you can say in phase one, the $586,000, show me what you paid on that. So it'll show you the incremental payouts that ended up absorbing
Each drop.
586. Yeah. And the same thing with phase two, the 3.2 million and so on. And so, but if I pulled my project budget and showed you, I'd have to have a couple flatbed carts to bring it in.
Oh, and I understand commercial projects.
You get it.
I completely get it. That's just like, yeah, the geeky part of me would just like.
That's all right. That's all right.
To get this complete, it's $7 million.
So the backbone, the transmission backbone, the estimate for that is 7 million.
But there's additional
7.
beyond that for like the other loop, the haystack loop.
That's not water resiliency.
Okay,
That is a master plan project that is separate from water resiliency.
Okay.
And you guys have already authorized me.
we've identified all the funding except for the $7 million for the backbone.
That's it.
Okay. Have you looked at what the ballot measure in May might do if that succeeds?
I have.
And
I can't say
it would force that to go to a vote.
It is my understanding, and please correct me, is that any new debt would have to go to vote. If we are lucky enough that we get the grant, the 25% we have, so it wouldn't be new debt. That would not have to go to vote. If Business Oregon comes back and says, you've done a heck of a job and we're going to give you $7 million to do your backbone, I couldn't accept that until it goes to vote. And with Business Oregon, the window opens, the window closes, and these are competitive, just like a grant. They're loans, but I'm competing against other cities that are asking them for money. So if the window closes and it hasn't gone to vote, we've just lost $7 million.
So with that initiative in May, what is the start date on that? Do we know? Would it be a January 1 start date of the following year? Because it wouldn't take effect right away.
my understanding is it would, any debt that would have to be incurred after May, whatever, I can't remember what the date is, would be. Any debt prior to that would not be impacted. Any debt after the vote would be impacted.
Maybe,
Our council, or what our bond council is talking about.
maybe we should ask Ashley about that. Because it seems to me that there should be verbiage, because all the verbiage has been written. But I seem to think that there was a date in there like of January 1, and I could be completely wrong. But I think it's definitely something to run past.
Well, I'll just back us up a little bit if I could, is if you remember, I ate the second year into my tour here, I was sitting in front of you talking about water resiliency and asking you to allow me to pursue loans. Taking this. So these loans take approximately 14 months for me to get through that entire process. A grant takes about 12 to 14 months, 12 months for the process, and then their review to award. And so once it's awarded, if we're stuck in the voting situation, I've lost the money either way. I have, what comes with both of those things is not only the window open and closed to invite you to apply, but then it's the review and the award. And when the award happens and we are actually awarded that money and there's an executed contract that comes with that, the clock starts. And I have to make certain progress within that time frame and spend those dollars and make my reports, because I have to send reports to them in order to fulfill the obligation of that award. And that's where the voting is absolutely detrimental to our infrastructure.
And I'm sorry, Karen, what is that window? What if,
Depends on if it's a grant or a loan. And what I mentioned is typically for a grant, it's 12 to 14 months.
to get that, but if you're awarded it, how,
2 years.
you have 2 years to use it after the.
All of our water resiliency, irregardless, like phase 1 is 586,000. Phase 3 is 5.3 million. I still have 2 years. It doesn't matter how big it is. That's the obligation. I can ask for an extension, but I have to have a viable reason I'm asking for that. And like the valves, I had to ask for an extension because they were hung up in the manufacturer and they honored that. But with that honoring, I had another obligation. And so I've got to be able to keep up with all that. And because without doing that, if I can't ensure, if I don't build a plan that says when I ask, I am really confident I can do this, all it does is hurt this city with any other funding that we ask for or any other grant we chase. So I'm really committed to hitting this out of the park for you guys, because we don't know what other things, I really was focused because I was hoping maybe our city hall, our school, our PD could take advantage of these 1% loans. And I wasn't going to do anything that was going to hurt that. So when we built this plan, we built it with a lot of contingencies. Windsor did a very good job for this city. They have a lot of environmentalists on their staff because we've had to go through a ton of environmental reviews. Even on Haystack Heights, that's what's holding us up, is the boring underneath that highway. There's a lot of water and wetlands that come over to the west side, and we've had to do a lot of environmental reviews. Just much to have to spend, but we did it. So these things are tough, and nothing would disappoint me more than to put in this kind of work and then just have it slip through my fingers because I couldn't get into the voting window quick enough and get back in front of you and say, yes, and because even when they award me, I still have to bring it to you and you have to say, yes, sign off. So I'm hung up, and you guys meet once a month for a formal. That's where you've got to give me the action. It can't be a work session. So I'm jumping into the agenda. I'm fighting all these timelines. So this is just another spring. But if it passes, we can do it. I'll still try my best. So that's that. First Street Bridge. Probably the best
Thanks.
Bottom line, I'll tell you is, before I get into the details, is Civil West says that the retrofitting, the information collected, that retrofitting the existing bridge appears to be feasible as an alternative.
Yes.
Okay, Jack, come on, let's. So, in December, for that week, you saw them do all the drilling. And then, the 18th, we actually got all that information to KPFF, who is the bridge structural engineering firm. They're phenomenal, by the way. We have, side note, squirrel. We have retained them to work on the design of the Talavana ramp rebuild. We just haven't been able to make progress trying to do it at no cost, working with OPRD. They don't have the staff, we don't have it. So anyway, I'm excited about that. January 8th, all parties got together and they reviewed Don Rondaba's geo information, the drilling Briggs information. And I just got it this morning. So you got the latest and greatest, and I can't even tell you how relieved I am.
So what does that mean exactly? Does that mean we?
It means that this current bridge can be retrofitted.
That will make it less expensive.
So make it seismically sound so that we could experience an earthquake and that bridge deck's not going to fall apart. The big challenge there was just not knowing if they could encase those current wood beams that are on there based on what it's sitting in. And that's what all that drilling was for, us to try to figure out what was under there, how far they had to go to actually hit bedrock, so to speak. And what kind of liquefaction was present in that area. So that's why they had it both ends of the bridge and a point in between. So I told Don, be easy, because this bridge is in good shape. According to ODOT's annual report, the bridge itself is structurally sound,
It went through.
but it's time to replace that bridge deck. And I didn't want to do an overlay on that, knowing they're going to be drilling to do this, or they say, you guys got to rebuild your bridge, you know? So Don Rondon was awesome. I was like breathing down his neck saying, what do you think, Don? Okay, based on this hole, is it looking good, or are you shaking your head saying, it's not good, Karen, you know? So these guys were fantastic. So this is a good news report.
So when you say it can be retrofitted, what happens next? Is it going to be retrofitted to be seismically?
So their next sentence says conceptual designs for the determination of upgrading, you know, the bridge is going to be presented to us. So that's what they're working on next, is they'll take this information, say, if we retrofit it, this is what we would recommend. This is what it would look like. They will also, if you don't like that, they will also be prepared to present us designs if we decided we wanted to replace it. If it can be retrofitted, why would we want to do that?
And it won't withstand a tsunami, however, right?
No, this was never meant to deal with this. If we have a tsunami, Nancy, the bridge is going to be the least of our concerns.
Yeah.
So it was always meant to be earthquake seismic, to meet the seismic standards that exist today and what we're dealing with our reservoirs and whatnot.
As I remember 100 years ago, discussions with the Emergency Preparedness Committee, remember that?
Yep.
They wanted a bridge that would withstand the 15 minutes between the earthquake and the tsunami.
Mhm.
People could get,
Some tidal influence, yeah. Mhm.
and so is that what we're looking at then?
That's factored in this as well. So enough to be able to let people escape and get out of there in vehicle and on foot.
Vehicle and.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good news story.
And do we have any idea of what that cost might be to retrofit?
I don't, and that's, you know, part of their next phase of their scope. And then once they give us that, it's going to be a matter of saying, okay, where's the money come from to retrofit it?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
So,
Real improved property.
That's finding some agreement.
So we're doing good stuff. We're doing really important things and I'm super proud of my team, and the business partners that we're working with. When Civil West, called me and had a meeting with me to talk about the acquisition, as their client, my first response was, okay, we have a project that's at midstream. What does this mean to me? Because I don't want to lose the team that I'm working with right now. And they assured me that that wasn't going to be an issue. Now, if some of their employees say, hey, the details of this acquisition doesn't feel so good, my retirement's impacted, my pay is impacted, maybe the location I work from is impacted, I'm making a personal decision to leave, they can't change that. But had a lengthy discussion on mergers, of which I have a lot of experience in corporate life. And so it was a really good discussion. And I think that for the initial phase and us getting through this project, I think we're going to be okay. So
Karen, did you go through the Haystack Heights?
I'm sorry.
Did you do the Haystack Heights?
I thought I did. Maybe I got sidetracked. I'm sorry. The engineering's complete, but we're waiting on a trenchless report that is due to us by the geotechs. We wanted to try to go trenchless as much as we could to avoid any tree impact. So we need that report before we can finalize the engineering. We're also waiting ODOT's approval because it goes through that environmental review. They're already in the process of that. I think we're probably within a week or maybe two of that. When we do this work, it's all shoulder work. And so there won't be lanes of traffic that's closed. But for safety, as all of you guys know, anytime you're approaching an active work zone, you have to slow down. So I talked to the team about the timing of this because we're preparing the paperwork to be able to put this out to bid. And I said, so when we're talking timing, we already have a backup coming into Cannon Beach as a result of the highway. And based on where we're going to be working, this has the potential to add to that. I said, so we need to be sensitive to that because just the slowdown of traffic could add to that issue. So again, working with the ODOT engineers to kind of take a look at that. We already got Jeff Gearhart out to look at all the trees. We will be doing a tree report. Our initial goal on this project was to have this completed by May, working with the two homeowners that gave us easements to come through their property to be able to loop the system. Was hoping that we weren't doing this in the summer and having that neighborhood tore up. We're trying our best, but it's looking highly unlikely that we would be done by May. We're going to have a very specialized crew that bores under the highway. And so this is not your typical McEwen Thorson kind of a job. And so we want to give the contractors enough time to respond to the RFP, because if we narrow it too much and only give them 2 weeks to respond to this and turn it around, we're not going to get enough bidders, and it's expensive to put these RFPs out. So I want to give them ample time, and February is a short month and we're blasting through January. So my time frame is really shortening. So
You notified the neighborhood?
we haven't notified them officially of when this is going to start, because until the engineering is complete and ODOT's review comes back to us, I don't have a time frame. But I've given them a general, and especially two homeowners that we're going to be cutting through. And I had communicated our desire is May, but I won't know until we're further into the engineering so that I can really give them a tight schedule. We haven't developed our schedule yet.
Yeah, I think keeping in contact with the neighborhood, every stage basis. How much is it going to affect Haystack Heights in terms of
Well,
and everything?
it's going to be a great effect to Haystack Heights. How uncomfortable it's going to be during construction. I think for the folks that are just at the end there where the bend is on that street, is it Chinook? It's going to be inconvenient. What we talked about with the Windsor engineers, we're gonna try to have one path of lane open where they can at least get through. There's gonna be some restriction to people getting to their driveways. Luckily, one of the lots is vacant, so that helps. I've already been in contact with the neighbor next door that gave us easement, and she's aware of that. So I said, I'll do as best I can to make it painless. I appreciate you giving us the easements to be able to do this. It wouldn't have happened without that. And so I want to do as much as I can to keep the two of them happy. And the rest of the neighborhood needs to just fall in line, because we'll be replacing additional lines as phase 2 of this. The first phase is just to get it across the highway, cut through that property and connect it, loop it. The next phase is the other projects in the master plan up on what's that? Oh, thank you. Where we replace that water line and add a hydrant, which is back towards the wooded area, which kind of lends itself to the California fire issue. And so that would be the second phase of this. So that's where we are.
I do have one more question,
Mm-hmm.
and that is just thinking about the California
Yes.
fire situation and also Lahaina. Do we have enough water in our hydrants? I mean, because they're running out of water in California in their hydrants. Do we have
They're
enough?
running out of water in California is multifold.
Yeah,
But I won't analyze their infrastructure, but I've been paying close attention to that. We are not running out of water.
okay.
Our hydrants have great pressure. The issue is because that's not looped up there, the pressure would be affected. If those woods were to catch fire or a structure fire happened and it spread quickly before the fire department could get up and contain it, and it happened to be on a day where we were having some east winds, we'd be in trouble up there. And this is why it's a master plan. This is why both of our fire chiefs have said, any of you guys going to do this project? And I said, I have to either acquire a property or get an easement. There's no other way to get into that neighborhood. And this was the challenge. So thank God you guys gave us the go ahead to pursue that, because this project would not have been done. So if either of those homeowners had just said no, and they didn't want to sell the property and we had to try to go through a condemnation, it would have been very expensive. So I am really indebted to those folks for working with us.
But this should help that situation.
Oh, it will resolve it, period. So it's a great project. I can tell you, Daniel is the person that's been on my team the longest, been at this city for over 40 years. Wanted this badly. And so I told him this morning in the staff meeting, thanks for pushing me and giving me the courage to go forward and ask for this and say what we needed and just spell it out regarding the private property. It was a tough conversation. Yeah. Nobody wants to go take somebody's property away or take some of it away, So anyway, I'm really grateful for this. And I think it is a big thing that this council agreed to that, and that master plan project got done for many, many reasons. And every time I see a fire like this, I just go, God, thank God we're doing this. So, and Eric, you'd be the one up there dealing with it.
Yeah.
So, any other questions? Any other projects you want to know about? Because we got a lot.
I did kind of want to come back to trails.
Okay.
And I want to make it short since I see lunch has arrived, but just kind of wondering about trails and transportation system plan, and obviously Public Works is involved in that, but I don't know if Parks is involved in that too, and or the Parks Committee at least. But this is the first I've heard of the project that you mentioned. And is that one in the transportation system?
Yes.
Okay. And we've had the conversation about trails actually being one of the opportunities to use DLT money. So And not sure what that process looks like of identifying what our priorities might be as far as trails, but
I think I mentioned to you guys before in one of our sessions, we were talking about TSP. And because a lot of it does involve public works. I look at that like I did our other master plans, is that you have to vet the projects. Because a lot of these are conceptual ideas, but you have to vet them by bringing in the experts that say, here's how this could be done. Or looking at it and say, hey, what you got down here, it's a great concept, but it's not doable in that form. Here's what's got to change to be able to execute this. We did it with our water and wastewater master plans. And there were several projects that we had to revise to be able to move forward. So it would be no different than the TSP. And then once we vetted some of these, you guys pick the projects that you want to go forward to. We put them through the vetting process and then we come back to you and say, this is the cost that we're looking at to do this. And I only mentioned the boardwalk because it's, I call it low hanging fruit because it'd be very easy to do. And there's a multitude of money that is out there that we could chase in grants for recreational grants and donations that I think it could be done. It doesn't solve this in the big loop about the S curves, north to south, but it would connect to that. So it's a first step in that direction. It touches your passion about educating the public about our reserves and the areas that we want to try to protect, the trees that we're trying to identify. And
I think we got a few of those opportunities out there. Is the trail on the north side of Ecola Creek that's got the bridges, is that a city trail?
so the trail on the north side are you talking the horse trail?
Yeah.
And what's your question?
Is that city?
It's not meant for pedestrian traffic. It's not maintained.
One of my points is, talked to Doug Dura the other day. And I mean, he did the habitat restoration along there and those bridges are dangerous. They're probably beyond saving at this point. So, I mean, at one point I was hoping that we could, maintain that trail or restore that trail.
And some of you that have been around a lot longer than me, I consulted Kirk on this because he's one of the ones on my team that has great institutional knowledge. He made it very clear to me that that trail was there specifically for Carmen's horses. Her team maintained it. And at the point that those horses were no longer here, the trail went away. And that Public Works is not out there maintaining it. We're not supposed to be doing things with it. And the intent was to let that grow back. And I said, okay, peace. I just asked because I know it's in disrepair.
Bridges.
Walk down there.
Got some bridges that are dangerous at this point. But I mean, I'd also hoped that, like I said, I'd hoped that trail could be restored because, connecting the two Les Shirley Park to Burr, I think would be something that would be, very nice rather than having to walk on that narrow fifth, where water pools and another one of those opportunities to do some education about wetlands and.
I'll be honest, all the public input that Jeff got on the TSP, I was surprised that didn't come up.
Well, I was thinking it was low hanging fruit.
Yeah. And so, but that doesn't mean that couldn't be a project that council would discuss and say, hey, let's do that. It doesn't have to be part of TSP. But again, it's about money. And we've got a couple of great trail experts that work with us, Trevor and I both, when it comes to, adaptable access, because we're audited by our ADA guy, which is a fantastic person. And we stay in touch with him regularly. Whenever we are consulting with someone about doing a trail improvement, we try to keep in mind that we want everybody to be able to use it. So they guide us on, the compaction of gravel, how things should be, so on and so forth. And so we have access to those people, but it costs money.
It's a much bigger question and I don't want to keep you any longer, but
That's all right.
the immediate issue is the hazardous bridges.
I was, when you brought up that they're hazardous, that is city property, correct? That those bridges are constructed on?
It is city property, yes.
Okay, that's, if they're hazardous and we recognize they're hazardous, I feel like that opens us up to some sort of potential issues if people can cross them and get hurt.
I think we need to talk about what to do about that short term because of the immediate hazard, but I would also hope.
Like taking them out, taking out the bridges.
Probably,
I know I tried to walk on it the other day and then I realized I can't do that.
yeah, no, yeah, you can't even walk on the trail
Yeah.
anymore.
Reach out to our insurance contact that came and talked to us about the recreational immunity issue that was a big topic not long ago. And she advised us on how we should handle things that when we're aware that it creates a safety issue, what we should do about it. There's some areas and items, depending on beach access, trails, whatever, you don't do anything. It's an area that is a natural environment. It's not meant to be used for certain purposes. And so the city does not have liability in that regard, but I would let her guide us on that before I took any move forward, because the intent was never for recreational use. It was for a horse trail, which
It
is
does kind of have
big
the
difference.
difference with, 3 bridges that it's actually something for, accessible. Anyway, I hope we'll be talking more about
Yeah, you can
short-term
talk about it and decide
solutions.
what you want to do. I'll touch base with her in the meantime and just run that by her and give it to Bruce, and he can follow up with you guys and let you know what she says.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
I sub that, you guys. And I want to thank you for the funding that you've given us for the projects.
Thanks, Karen.
So thorough.
Okay, so we're going to take a brief recess for lunch. Okay, so we are continuing on our city council work session and retreat, and we're down in our agenda to our city hall and police station projects. Bruce, would you like to give us some update, please?
Sure. The contract signed with PNC Construction, and they are the new CMGC, or Construction Manager General Contractor. Right now, we are all working to plan the temporary sites and also getting temporary power to the police station and the city hall. So that's a good portion of the effort. Also, the bids have been sent out, all of the bid packages. And in a CMGC, what's different from a regular construction project is that the bids are public. This is like a public bid opening when they bring the things out for the CMGC bids. So we will have that information. Anticipate that that'll be around the 22nd of January. They will be returned. We're anticipating bringing a GMP to you sometime at one of the February meetings. And that would be either the 4th or the 11th. The GMP is, as it states, it's the guaranteed maximum price. It's based on the bids that are received and that are publicly received. And the bid can change if there are new conditions. For example, if they find that the soil conditions are much poorer than what they thought they would be for City Hall, there's a potential for a foundation modification. But generally, though, the bid that you get is considered the guaranteed maximum price. And the contractor gets paid a multiplier of the amount that you have for your GMP. And in our case, it is 2%. It started out at 3, we negotiated down to 2. And in one way, the city benefited from making the change because the previous contractor, I think, was around 5, Rusty?
City Hall was a little less. I think it was 3.5 or 4.
Okay, well, anyway, I thought that it was higher for the,
It was CBE that was higher
okay,
because we did that one quite a
That's
bit
right.
earlier.
that's right. Right. But anyway, the getting it down to 2% was a very good number. And then that is the multiplier that they use for the bids that they've received and the payments that come in that's how they receive their compensation. The temp site, that's kind of the critical path right now is trying to get 2 units that we can operate from. They'll be down at the end of Second Street. One will be for the police department, and the other will be for City Hall functions. Some City Hall functions are going to move to the Public Works Yard because we couldn't get enough buildings for the size of the building had to been too great for that location. So those things will be happening, and they'll probably be happening sometime in March. So we're hoping to be able to go ahead with construction, doing demolition, et cetera, sometime in March. Any questions or anything not covered there?
Who decides which of the bids to take?
I'm working with the CMGC and the city. But generally, the people that are signing for the bids, they're saying, we will do, everything that's in these plans. And so they're guaranteeing that work. And then, but ultimately it is the CMGC that guarantees the work. So we will be present when they're going through the bids. And, if they say, well, there's a reason we don't want to go with this one, we would, work with them on that to see what it is. But again, it's all public bidding.
What's to stop them from taking a higher bid than they need to because they would get that 2% of the maximum amount?
We see the bids before, so if
Okay.
there's work, it's foundation work, and there's 3 bids. The assumption is that you'll take the lowest bid unless there's a reason why you don't want to take that.
Okay,
But all that information, and it's all reviewed, and it's reviewed by the
they
architect.
have to articulate it and everything.
Yes,
City has approval of each of those or
I don't know. I think that we can object if there's somebody that we don't want to have, and if they're trying to object, I think that we can consider what their concerns are. We don't want to make them work with somebody that they've got a good reason to not work with. But generally, you're looking for the CMGC to be responsible for the pricing and maintaining the costs on the contract. And so you would take, give a strong recommendation or strong recognition for their concerns.
the plan still to purchase one of the temporary buildings for the food pantry?
That ultimately, we're looking to purchase or have a new unit for the food pantry. We had a structure that was ready to we were ready to buy and then ultimately use it for the food pantry. But we lost that with some of the hiccups we had in between with the bidding and the lawsuit and some other things. And so right now we are at a point where we are renting two, and we will look to buy one when it comes time to be able to move into
So there'll be some flexibility there when we see where things are going.
yes, what happens is that increase. We're looking to go ahead and get the unit one time, buy it, reuse it. We aren't able to do that and make the schedule. So while they're still looking for a unit that meets the criteria, and we can buy units that are bigger than what we had originally sought, but then we're gonna have trouble with the trees that are in the area. When we move it over to the Cannon Beach site.
So the rejection of the school, the levy, the bond measure or the measure in November, that did not keep us from buying a structure, because I was thinking that the money for that structure was coming, it was going to be our city money was going to be reimbursed through that bond for that measure, from that measure.
Sorry, Nancy, enough.
Well, we were going to go for a bond for the school,
Right,
and now that's been rejected. So the money for buying the building for the pantry, that money is coming from what, general fund?
yes.
And it's being reimbursed through what? Is it being reimbursed?
No, the general fund is the reimbursing agency.
Okay,
We were never going to pay for that or unit from the bonds for this.
okay.
No, I think it was always general fund,
So
but
it's been general fund. I just thought it was going
Yes.
to be reimbursed through the bond.
No.
That was in the budget.
Yeah,
the only thing that changed was the awning plan. That was
Yeah.
moved to the general fund at one point.
yes.
So right now, it's kind of contingent on the electricity.
Yeah, and met with Civic Power yesterday, for all three locations. And they're a couple of months behind. But they're working closely with PNC.
And are we getting a guaranteed maximum price for the completion of both projects, or is it two prices?
Two prices. It's a single contract, but prices and cost of the projects and management of the projects are bifurcated.
And the plans are to start with the police station and then just move the subcontractors down to City Hall. Is that still gonna happen?
There will be, for efficiency, there will be, to the degree possible, crews that will work on one site and then go to the next site. And they'll be tracked separately depending on where they're working. It's not, there's a good possibility that the police station will start first because it doesn't, nothing has to move out of the way well, there are some items that are going to be moved, but we're already working on the move for the cash sites, and there's one structure that it's either going to be demolished or moved by a house mover, which is the large garage that but there's a good possibility that you will see activity at the police station first. And but that's the most efficient way we can work. If we can find a way to go ahead and complete a trade and then move that trade to the City Hall. You got anything else?
What happens if they come in, excuse me, what happens if they come in over budget?
When you're saying come in over budget, are you talking about when they give us the GMP or at the end of the project over the GMP?
No, when they come in with the GMP, are you planning on trying to stay within the budget that you have?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And the budget will include contingencies. There's possibility of going to those first.
A possibility of going to the contingencies first?
Yes, if the project is, I don't know the size of the contingency, but if it's $500,000 and the price is $100,000 over, it's possible to make a decision that you take from the contingency to go ahead and pay for that 100,000.
But what if the contingency overrides something that was already in the plans?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
So regardless, so will the GMP include some of the contingency money?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it'll include, say, $500,000, and that will not go outside of budget.
Right. Now it's a line.
Plan.
Yeah, it's a line. It is a line item.
So it includes all of the contingency.
Right, yeah. I just wanted to be clear on that. I
Yeah.
have a full understanding of what
Mhm.
commercial projects look like.
Right.
That was just a question.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
That's a good question.
So in terms of a meeting place, once City Hall and the police station are being constructed, where are we with that?
We've been meeting with the,
How are we meeting at?
yeah, we've been in discussions with the chamber. And where we are at now is we gave them a price and which I believe is $1,000 a month. And then it covered 6 meetings because we wanted to make sure that we had meetings for council and for the planning commission and DRB. And then there's possibility, because they don't want us to lock up everything. We're saying that, I'm sorry, there's additional two, and that is the Parks Committee and the Public Works. Now, they may have to move from where they are right now, but I doubt it. But that's the cost that we had proposed would be $1,000 a month. And then we would get top billing or top priority for those 6 or 8 meetings. And then we would have the ability to schedule additional meetings. And then if there are people like the Friends of Haystack Rock, they meet here, and they meet at no cost. The way that we will deal with that is they need to make their own arrangements unless one of the meetings is not taken that's included in the base price.
And that meeting would have to have full internet capability because a lot of the people on the board are remote.
A lot of the equipment that you see in here will be moved to that.
So I mean, if Friends of Haystack Rock, if there was too many meetings that month,
Mhm.
there's no way that Friends of Haystack Rock could pay a big fee to be in that space.
And we can work with on that. It's like, hopefully they'll be flexible for their time. But we want to keep everybody whole in this process.
It's just,
Is there,
We'll use our equipment down.
They have some equipment on site, but I'm gonna be going through it and make sure we have the same capabilities in there.
Okay.
so for instance, Friends of Haystack Rock, is it something that could be set up so you could set up a Zoom meeting for them? So they
Yes.
could all Zoom together, but only via computer?
And they do that now. They have their own Zoom account anyway.
Oh, okay,
So they could easily do that. I could work with them to do that if necessary.
maybe just,
They could also have people, because often people will come to the meeting, be physically here.
Mhm.
yeah.
I think, yeah, I think Angela does that now.
well, and maybe it's just, a few of the people that don't understand that capability, just go to someone's house, coffee,
Yeah.
bottle of.
Yeah, I mean, you have to adapt.
And then everybody can Zoom together.
We're gonna have to.
Not ideal.
To attend. If they wanted to attend here, they should be able to attend there.
So the council usually meets anywhere from 4 to 6 times a month. Are you accounting for that, for the extra city council meetings that are conducted? Because it doesn't sound like the number of meetings that you have contracted with the chamber, the extra council meetings that often happen.
We're gonna have fewer meetings.
Huh?
We're gonna have fewer meetings.
There you go.
He said,
Yeah. Less
Fewer,
business
but
getting.
Sorry.
Fewer but very long meetings.
Fewer but long.
Yeah.
And let's just remind me, it's 10 meetings.
It was
we're paying
10.
For with the $1,000. So
Okay.
that should give us extra
It
meetings.
should give you extra meetings.
I think that we account for 6.
And the chamber board is meeting on January 15th, and they're gonna be reviewing the proposal.
That should be a pretty easy transition. And the requirements would be, we get there early, we set up, we take down, room is broom clean. They may put in a keypad so they don't have to be there while we're there. So we'll become essentially, a tenant.
I guess that's pretty reasonable. $100 a meeting is not too terrible.
Right, and again, they may counter, I don't know, but it's a community room, and this is kind of almost the definition of community, to go ahead and have the public meetings there. And if there is some reason that it's below what they can, tolerate, we'll work with them.
Well, it still leaves them open for their weekend events, which is usually when they have.
Right, and if we
Exception.
cleaned it, I mean, if we promise, if we promise to clean up, but that's usually cited as the reason for the high price,
Yeah,
is the professional cleaning.
yeah,
I mean,
we'll sweep. I mean.
Yeah, I know.
More of a mess.
throw out the garbage.
I've done that many times. in the
Yeah,
chamber.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then,
For A-Trap stuff before.
Yeah.
Or Friends of Haystack Rock, rather, for the lecture series, we were in there.
Are there any other options if that doesn't, if we end up needing more meeting times, or the chamber board votes the contract down, or?
we would then be looking at rentals, on a normal, just like anybody else is going to
Okay.
be going to a room, try to be able to find a spot.
Condemnation. No, just kidding.
Or anything in the chamber contract about use of the facilities?
No,
I think there was.
I don't think there was.
Is it the chamber agreement as far as the building and land?
Buildings privately owned by the chamber, and the chamber paid for rent for X number of years.
It's like a 99-year.
Yes.
Yeah, but,
And you mean?
For the.
That's based on-
itself, and The chamber building itself is privately owned by the chamber.
city owns the land underneath.
Correct.
And so that, we think that is kind of a hook that we should be able to, get a good rate, not necessarily pay the commercial rate.
But they're required to pay the lease for however long it is at the rate that we're here.
Mhm.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, it was essentially a donation
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
from the city back then.
Yeah.
Essentially, it wasn't, but it was essentially.
And
And is there-
there was an office that was to go to the city. It was for a recreation director, which is a position we don't have now.
There's an agreement as far as that lease goes? The land?
There is a lease for the land agreement.
Is it like $1 a year or something?
I think it was $1 for the entire time frame, but
Really?
I'm not exactly familiar with the
Yeah.
particular.
So it's a donation in reality, but
What's that building built?
in procedure. Yeah.
It's probably in the 70s, see. The council had it one time, and then, I think it was around the 70s that they built the chamber hall, maybe it was the 80s.
Yeah,
It's gonna be about the
It's gotta be late 70s or early
80s, yeah.
Or no, it has to be at least mid-80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the lease was.
There's a sign.
Oh, the lease was signed in 90.
The lease was signed in 90. So it was probably built up like that.
Yeah,
Checking the,
it's the late 80s.
and it's a 99-year lease.
Are there any other questions?
Will you come to us with, if there's a change from that amount of money?
Yes,
Okay, thanks.
and we should know on 15.
Okay.
So in terms of moving out of City Hall and the police station, guys got that all under control? Moving everything out of this building?
My experience is that moving and in control are,
Oh, I know. Yeah. Oh, I should
they
make.
don't run together,
Sentence,
run to
right.
each other in a sentence. No, yeah, no, we'll be taking care of that. We'll be having a moving company that will be assisting. We'll be working with a contractor that will sell items, that sort of thing, or purchasing all the stuff that we need or want. It'll be, we've got some records work done. Stored, because we've got a contract where people are over time. Jen, do you want to talk about that, the contract that we have as far as the records and the management?
But the building was built in 1989.
Oh, wow, we were way off. Yeah, okay.
So we have we've been working on the scanning project for a couple of years, and now we have to do it because
Yeah.
we're moving. So everyone's been boxing up all of their records and getting things organized. We're kind of storing them in place until we have the truck come out to pick them up. Because every time they come out to pick up your records, you get charged. So we're trying to get everything done. So one giant pickup. So the program, they call it ORMS, Oregon Records Management System, I believe. And there is a company that takes our records, scans them with OCR, so they're completely searchable. And then they send us the files. We then upload the files into their system. And then that is our state archived system. So it's an approved archival system. The originals then get destroyed. And so what's really neat about this system is we'll have everything available. There's a ton of search functions. It's also, like I said, it's searchable. So you have the name of your PDF plus information in there. And we can actually open up certain documents, certain types of documents for the public to look at themselves. So it's all in the parameters that you set up for. So like the history by location files, that's what we get records requests for most often. People want to know what we have on their property. When those get scanned and we upload them, we can actually make them available to anyone to look at. They go through the ORMS website and can go and type in their address and find the records. So it's a process. The scanning usually takes several months because we get in a queue with everybody else. So we have a lot of records. We're going to specify which ones we want scanned first, which is history by location. And then they will scan them, send them to us. That we have to check them into the system, set up the parameters, and then if ever we need to refer to something, we go in there.
It's a step up for what people can do now.
It's like a great example is Oak Creek Terrace. When the guy was here, I don't have all of our records into that system, but we have a lot of records that we scanned years ago. And I knew approximately when he had gone to council in the 90s. And so I was able to go to old council packets. I can search Elk Creek and I was able to find information pretty quick. That's how great this search method is. The bummer part is some of our older records are pencil.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to be able to search that, but you can find the PDF of your history by location, open up that entire PDF and see whatever was in that file. And then future records obviously are always typed, so they'll be scanned. And then once all this project is done, at the end of every project, at the end of every meeting, we take our record PDF and we upload it into their system and then we destroy our hard copy. So we will essentially become paperless to a point, but that's the end goal.
Yeah.
So, and it's a state approved archival system, which is huge.
Right.
Yeah.
So. And I remember Tessa Shutt, she works for City of Portland. She uses it all the time. So she's talked to me about how they've done all the different programs they use. And she's like, yeah, she goes, it's a little project. You go up there, download the PDF, it stays in the system. You can see whatever you want, and then you just delete the PDF out here. But you're done using it because you don't need it anymore. It's archived. And nothing can get deleted accidentally. And you also can set it for records retention. So if you have a document that's only needs to be saved 10 years, it will automatically delete the document at the end of 10 years, at the end of 10 years and record the deletion. Because if you ever destroy documents, you have to have a record that you destroyed it. So you have to have the document, what it's about, when it was, when you destroyed it. That system tracks all of that for you.
Wow.
It was pretty
Wow.
cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, so people have been going through stuff, and once they get through all of their files, we'll have a better understanding of what's gonna get scanned and then what needs to be stored. Because there are some records that we're not gonna send off to be scanned that we use on a consistent basis that we're gonna want to keep with us. And so we'll have an idea, okay, these are what's staying, all the rest is going, and then we'll know, what we need to account for, what needs to be stored or what can come over to the temporary buildings.
Wow.
Yeah. It's an exciting thing. It's more daunting when you think about trying to get everything checked in and done. But once it's done, it's gonna be amazing.
Implementing is the hardest part, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, we have to train everybody because the admin staff that we've worked on it before are all gone, and I haven't used it very much, so I need to be retrained, and then we're gonna all get trained at the same time. So once we go and get trained, like, we're gonna be using it all the time.
Right.
So when you get trained on something, you don't use it for 2 years, you're like, oh, what do I do? Now we'll all be trained, we'll all be using it, and we'll all be on the same path.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you guys. That's fun.
I am very happy that the history is just amazing. Do you remember the horse manure?
Oh, yeah.
That's how I found history in it, was I went to the ORMS site and looked at all council records that use the word manure. And that is how I was able to
Which is
find.
basically everywhere.
I was able to find the whole history, and I could download the minutes of every time they used the word manure. And every time the word manure came up was typically about the horses and,
Yeah.
so we were able to put together the history of it. So it's a really neat system.
And what are you using that history for?
Well, that was, remember the horse?
Oh, yeah, I remember the-
Oh, yeah. How could you
Yeah.
forget
That
that?
was my first real foray into using it, was the horse manure.
Oh,
It worked.
I think of Dr. Wayne and his.
Yes, it's
Yeah, Dr. Wayne.
Yeah. So that's the scanning project, and we're all very excited to have that up and running.
Good.
Any more questions on the project? Okay, you give a,
Was excited about, for the apprehensive or
Which
about
part?
the move?
yeah,
I mean, it's, both. Yeah, okay.
From an allergy standpoint, we're very excited.
I was just gonna say, health and safety. Yeah.
Jen's voice and my voice has changed.
Yeah.
No, everyone's excited.
Good.
It's a little daunting when you think about all the work that's gonna happen beforehand, but once it starts going, it's gonna go. And, everyone has a plan, and, if things change, we just have to pivot.
Yeah.
We'll make it work, and at the end, we're gonna have this wonderful building.
Good.
And we're impressed with the team that comes with PNC, and we already were impressed with CETA, and they're working very well together.
Good.
Yeah, estimated time of completion for both projects.
15 months,
That's not bad.
From groundbreaking or from now?
groundbreaking.
And we are gonna have a nice groundbreaking ceremony, right?
We're kind of intended to do a competition with Manzanita.
Yes.
They did a cool thing. They called it I Dig City Hall. Their thing was the opening, and their thing was shovels. And they made shovel cookies.
Oh,
I mean, really nice designer cookies with the stuff and some other things, but we've challenged ourselves to go ahead and try to do something better than that, but the effort hasn't been put in yet.
It's on our list. I think we're more excited about the demo of this building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of creativity has gone into that.
Yeah.
wrecking balls?
It would be a loader. I think all you have to do is take out this wall and it'll go back down, just around those doors or halfway down. There's actually a point. I mean, this wall is a bearing wall which holds up the roof. And when you go and you look at the bracing that's there, the roof is holding up the wall. So it's not the way it's supposed to be. I have a peripheral issue. If you're done talking about City Hall, it's related to the City Hall project in a way. It's the farmer's market.
Now, that's on the agenda for tomorrow.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. And I think we need to be careful to follow the agenda. So if anybody wants
Sure.
to come for those.
Fine. Thanks.
So anybody have any questions on the police station and city hall? Okay, so we're ready for good of the order.
I did we emailed Rob about the speed limit on S curves.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it was fresh in the head. And he said speed limits throughout town are statutory speed limits set by Oregon law, business district, residential, school zone, etc. Speed limits that differ from the statutory speed limit of a roadway are known as designated speed limits. These are established through an engineering investigation based on national standards. So an engineering investigation would have to be completed
Oh, my God.
that would support the lowering of a statutory speed limit. So,
Oh, my goodness. That is, what a bunch of.
So we can't just make signs and put them out there.
Oh, that's incredible.
I thought that was the case.
Really?
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
A secondary portion of that is the actual enforcement of
Right,
Mhm.
that. What's that gonna take to actually enforce and will it actually change anything?
yeah.
Costs us a bunch of money to not change anything.
Well, I single-handedly go about 15 whenever I go on the S curves and just to have people line up behind me, their lights shining at me.
I do the same.
And I try and go slower if they do that. So,
Okay, anything else for good of? the
yes, I do have something. I wanted to ask Bruce, I think I might have made a very dumb request of Kelly the other night at the meeting when it depends on what our contract says. So our contract with Escape Lodging for the RV park, do we give them a flat fee plus anything, a percentage, anything over a certain amount? Or do they just automatically get the money and reimburse us a certain amount? Or how does that work with them?
I would have to talk to Tim. It's been a while since I looked at it, but I believe that we give them a certain amount.
let me see if he's available real quick.
Yeah,
Because if that's true, it makes no sense for Kelly to be asked to negotiate with Escape Lodging. Because they're not getting the money. They're not getting the $8,500.
That
It's the
fee.
city that's getting it, huh?
I think it was a flat fee and a percentage, a monthly fee
I think.
and a percentage.
So that $8,500 is going to the city. Not
Most of it would be.
not to Escape Lodging.
Oh,
Escape
here he
Lodging.
comes. He's running.
Oh,
He's got the answer. He's got the answer.
answer, what was the question?
What is the full question again?
Full question is, the other night at the meeting, I asked Kelly to negotiate with Escape Lodging for either a free space or a lesser, but it's not, that doesn't make any sense because the money isn't going to Escape Lodging, is it? It's going to the city, the $8,500.
What does our contract say with them?
We're essentially moving it from the general fund to the RV park fund, but the associated expenditures with regards to Escape Lodging would be run through the so yeah, we move it from the general fund to the RV park fund. Now, Escape Lodging gets paid two ways. One, they run the expenditures, so they do all the expenditures on their side. And that's where the revenue goes in, but they also get a monthly management fee and they get a percentage of the overall profit. So
So the profit would be reduced by $5 and so only a percentage of that is what they'd be losing.
correct. That is what it should be.
Do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head. It's based on their entire net revenue for the year.
But it's
Net income.
probably nowhere near $8,500 for that spot. They're not getting 100%.
No, they're not getting 100%.
So there's no reason for Kelly to negotiate with them. They have nothing to do with it. Unless they're willing to give up their percentage. I mean, that's all.
Right. I mean, that's,
Not very
I mean,
much.
that could be what they give up as the discount though.
yeah.
Right.
They could have already
It
given up
can't be
their
more
entire
than,
profit.
it can't be
off of
more than
it.
10%, I don't think.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but we write a check in July.
Yeah, so then Kelly, I mean, it makes no sense for her to talk to them. They have nothing to do with it.
We can stop that process.
Yeah, I think the conversation most probably with Escape Lodging is basically we would pay whatever they're theoretically going to lose
Percent.
management fee. And so that would be a much cheaper. There's probably something with regards to their reservation system. So, but I think we could work that out.
Yeah, and probably
Mhm.
not even close to 8,500.
I would guess no.
Okay. Yes.
And she talked to Michelle, the manager at the RV park, right? So she, yeah.
We need to correspond directly with.
Yeah, she said she
Better shot.
negotiated with them 2 years ago.
Contract.
What did she negotiate? I mean, it's not them. She's not paying them. It's paying,
Well, and not understanding that part of the process
Yeah.
too. Could, I mean, she did the right thing. That made the most sense.
Mhm.
You know?
okay. So now that I understand more about how, I realize that they're not losing $8,500.
They're not, that is correct. They're not,
Losing it,
correct.
right. And the city at our meeting agreed to give it up, to donate it.
And essentially that would be inside the RV park fund, which has sufficient fund, more than enough sufficient.
So why did that show up on her budget?
I don't recall the agreement being to donate it to them. It was to be able to do it because they can't book long-term. And so we needed to have approval to.
I think we had to have the council's approval to be able to forego that revenue is what I would suspect. So that is what the actual ask probably should have been more clear, is forego that revenue inside the RV park fund.
So last night on, or 2 nights ago, whenever it was, last council meeting, on the, when they had their ask,
Mhm.
why was $8,500, $8,500 part of their ask? Because they're not having to pay it.
Correct. It probably should not have been written that way, but yes, that is correct. We should have, it probably would have, again, the approval of the 80 or the approval of the 2 spots was probably enough from the council to be able to admit foregoing the revenue. What we will have to do though is negotiate with Escape Lodging to make sure that they're made whole.
Right. That has nothing to do with HRAP's budget and shouldn't even be coming in as a line item for them.
Not for the $8,500. That is correct.
That's
That is correct. But there will have to be a check written of some sort to Escape.
right, but not from them, not from HRAP.
Correct.
So
Well, will that go though from HRAP? Because wouldn't that be part of what they would have to pay? HRAP would have to pay, in theory, those fees.
The general fund would,
So a smaller portion would.
yeah, it's
they already
not going to be.
to forego money, so they shouldn't have to pay anything.
But Escape Lodging.
Yes, Escape Lodgings.
So Escape Lodging would need to be paid by HRAP.
They'll
Not by the-
more through the RV park fund and the RV park fund reimbursed
Right.
by A-Trap.
So just real quick, the motion from that night was Ogilvy moved to approve making an RV spot available between the 2nd week of May through the 1st Tuesday of September based on availability for the 2025 for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Volunteer for A-Trap.
We didn't talk about money.
No,
We didn't talk about
Just
money.
making the reservation.
We had to make the reservation. We couldn't make a long-term reservation. That violates their rules.
So we didn't really talk about money at that meeting.
at the meeting that we approved. the
Right.
Spot.
And it actually says, Ennis added, this was earlier, sorry. Ennis added, it would be May, June for 1 fiscal year and the remaining the following. And there is one this year that would be a budget amendment. So like the plan at that meeting was to do a budget amendment.
I think really,
HRAP's budget.
A-Trap budget amendment because they didn't have it planned in their budget.
So in other words, we did decide at that, they thought, or, well, I don't think we've decided where it comes from, who's paying for it. We have, my understanding, I thought we were donating it, but I think, I'm not sure if everyone else thought that too. I don't think that, I never anticipated that A-Trap would pay that.
Let me read her separate. So I was just reading.
Oh, they're asking us to pay them to pay that.
Right.
so I think if it's okay with the council, what I'll do is reach out to Escape Lodging, figure out what the process is, and then what they would be foregoing if we did not pay the 80, how much is their management or
Senate.
percentage, and we'll make that payment and we'll work through that process. If that's all right with council.
I think that's the way.
Is that good?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Mhm.
Run.
Farther than you did the last time.
Okay, got that?
Yeah, so it's still, we still don't have an answer.
Right, but we'll work on it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for good of the order? Okay, meeting's adjourned.